Chapter 277. Xinyu didn't think much about being called a Yu. 2 days ago, after Xinyu and Shang Junlin got closer, the other party asked for his name. Xinyu told him his name, and Shang Junlin started to call him a Yu. He said it sounded intimate. Xinyu knew that the other party was the emperor of the mortal world, so he followed the others and called him Your Majesty. You don't belong to the mortal world, so you don't have to follow the rules of the mortal world. You can just call me by my name. Shang Junlin told him his name. I think Your Majesty suits you very well. In Xin Yu's eyes, a man wearing a black emperor's costume was born to be a king. He didn't care too much about how to address him. He just called him whatever he was used to. Shang Junlin couldn't persuade him. Seeing that there was no reluctance in Xian Yu's expression, he let him be. Your Majesty, do you want me to go back to the palace with you? Xun Yu was tempted. These days, he didn't do anything else but accept the feeding of the emperor of the mortal world. It was also at this time that he realized that there were so many delicious foods in the mortal world. It was completely different from what he remembered. Seeing that he was tempted, Shang Junlin tucked the young man's hair behind his ear and said, not only the palace, but there are also many restaurants in the capital. They gather all the delicacies from all over the world. As long as you wants to eat, you can eat it. As an emperor, he was best at reading people's minds. Although Xin Yu was an immortal, he was more good-looking and knowledgeable than ordinary people. Shang Junlin slowly threw out the bait and waited for the immortal to answer. A Yu's reign helped me a lot. According to the rules of the mortal world, I should treat you well to show my gratitude. In order to coax the immortal to go back to the palace with him, Shang Junlin said, Yu has other places to go. Do I have other places to go? Xin Yu thought about it. It seemed that he didn't. Gods didn't like to live together like mortals. Everyone lived their own lives. He had been sleeping for many years, and he didn't know where his former friends were. He originally planned to continue sleeping, but now, I have nowhere else to go. Since that's the case, how about you follow me back to the palace? Shang Junlin's eyes suddenly lit up. Xin Yu didn't want to break the silence, so he replied, Sure. Shang Junlin immediately gave the order to prepare to return to the palace. At the same time, he sent the news back to the palace. When he asked Xin Yu, he had already made two plans. If Xin Yu was unwilling to go back to the palace with him, he would think of a way to stay in Mount Shi for a while. If Xin Yu agreed, then he wouldn't need to stay any longer. As the head eunuch who served by the emperor's side, Eunuch Meng was the first to receive the news. He was extremely surprised. He naturally knew that the white-haired youth had an extraordinary identity and could also see that the emperor treated him differently. However, he did not expect that the emperor would have the intention of abducting him back to the palace. That was a true immortal. Eunuch Ming, who could vaguely sense his majesty's thoughts, was horrified. Gongzi, you can take a look. If there's anything else you want, tell me and I'll arrange it. Shang Junlin didn't trust anyone else to handle Shan Yu's matter, so he sent Eunuch Meng to personally arrange it. Eunuch Meng prepared things according to Shan Yu's preferences and came to inquire. In any case, Shen Yu had just woken up a few days ago, so he didn't know much about the mortal world. Seeing that Eunuch Meng prepared things that he liked, he said, You can arrange it as you see fit. Eunuch Meng didn't dare to disturb him too much, so he took his people and left. Shen Yu sat by the window and raised his arm. A white bird flew over and landed on his finger. Shen Yu combed its feathers with his fingers. The white bird intimately rubbed against his fingertips. If the state preceptor was here, he would find that the white bird that landed on Xian Yu's finger was a very intelligent bird. It wouldn't easily get close to anyone. The bird chirped a few times, and Shun Yu took the dessert crumbs from the plate and fed it. When Shang Junlin came in, he saw this scene. As he came closer, the bird flapped its wings and reluctantly flew to the side. Is this a spiritual sparrow? Shang Junlin had heard of this kind of bird from the state preceptor. The spiritual sparrow was snow white, only its beak was red. This kind of bird symbolized auspiciousness. It carried spiritual energy and could ward off evil spirits. Of course, when Shang Junlin heard about it before, he didn't take it seriously. After all, at that time, he didn't believe that there were gods in the world. Now, the gods themselves had descended in front of him. The emperor, who used to be dismissive of gods and ghosts, had changed his mind. Xinyu opened his hand and released the spiritual sparrow. The white bird hovered by the window for a while and then flew up into the sky. Your Majesty, you like it? Xinyu turned to look at Shang Junlin. It's the state preceptor. He always said that he wanted to raise one. Shang Junlin walked to the other side and sat down. Xinyu knew that the state preceptor was the one who presided over the sacrifice. The power of faith from him was different from others. Xinyu had a good impression of him and silently remembered this. Let's not talk about this. Meng Chang said that he asked you. You don't want anything in particular. When you arrive at the palace, if you want anything, just tell me or ask him. Okay. Xinyu agreed. However, he didn't think that he wanted anything. Shang Junlin had already arranged everything very well. 2 days passed in a flash. Early in the morning of the day of departure, Mount Shi was busy. The arrival and departure of the emperor were big events, not to mention that there was another person with a special identity. Shang Junlin held Shan Yu's hand and boarded the emperor's carriage. One morning, Shang Junlin woke up to the sound of birds chirping. Following the sound, he found a young man in white standing by the stream in the woods. Several familiar white birds were flying around him. Why are they following us? Shang Junlin often saw white birds flying around the young man since he saw the spiritual sparrows around Xinyu on the first day. Didn't His Majesty say that the state preceptor wanted to raise one? I asked them. These two are willing to be raised. Shang Junlin found that there were 2 white birds in the young man's hand. The 2 spiritual sparrows were round like 2 white glutinous rice balls. Their feathers were fluffy and round. They fell on the young man's palm and enjoyed the young man's behavior of combing their feathers. Are they for the state preceptor? Shang Junlin felt a little uncomfortable. He hadn't received anything from the young man. They are willing. Xinyu corrected him. Okay, they are willing to be driven by the state preceptor. Although the spiritual sparrows were small, they were very beneficial to practitioners. The state preceptor woke up from his sleep and saw Eunuch Ming beside the emperor. State preceptor, hurry up. Eunuch Ming rarely urged people like this. The state preceptor didn't dare to delay. He quickly tidied himself up and went to see Shang Junlin under Eunuch Ming's lead. When he arrived, Shang Junlin was talking to the white-robed deity with his head lowered. They were very close to each other. The state preceptor frowned and thought to himself, isn't His Majesty a little too close to the deities? Of course, he hoped that His Majesty would pay attention to the existence of the deities. He hoped that he was overthinking. State preceptor, you are here? Shang Junlin turned around. Greetings, Your Majesty. The state preceptor bowed respectfully. Xinyu also turned around. As soon as he turned around, the state preceptor saw the spiritual sparrow resting on his arm. I called you here because you heard that you want to raise spiritual sparrows. Coincidentally, there are 2 spiritual sparrows in Shishan who are willing to be raised. Shang Junlin stretched out his hand in front of the spiritual sparrow. The spiritual sparrow reluctantly jumped onto his hand. In the future, you must treat them well. Shang Junlin held the spiritual sparrow and walked in front of the state preceptor. The state preceptor took the spiritual sparrow in a daze. The spiritual sparrow that he had wanted for most of his life was now in his hands. I will definitely treat them well. All right, you can leave now. Shang Junlin said lightly. The state preceptor's long-cherished wish was finally fulfilled. Subconsciously, he wanted to thank the deity who fulfilled his wish. However, he did not know if it was his illusion, but His Majesty seemed to be intentionally or unintentionally preventing him from talking to the deity. Is Your Majesty unhappy? After the state preceptor left, Xinyu looked at Shang Junlin and asked, Shang Junlin could not say that he was giving gifts to the deity because of Xinyu. The state preceptor is Your Majesty's man. If you fulfill his wish, he will work even harder for Your Majesty. Xinyu stroked the man's slightly furrowed brows. He did not want to see Shang Junlin's frown. The young man's hand was very cold, but it lit a fire for the man who was touched. The fire started a prairie fire and burned everything. Shang Junlin looked at Xinyu with a deeper gaze, as if a storm was brewing. Xinyu's animal instincts felt the danger, and he subconsciously wanted to escape. He was caught. Where did you know all this? Shang Junlin held Xun Yu's hand with a deep gaze. 2 days ago, Meng Yuan read this to me in the storybook that he read to me. He changed his appearance when he was satisfied. He felt a little strange when he was too aggressive. He frowned and wondered if he had done something that he should not do. Shouldn't I do this? Shang Junlin closed his eyes and suppressed the complicated emotions in his heart. He did not expect the young man to give the spiritual sparrow to the state preceptor for his own good. How could he let go of the deity who was inexperienced in the world, but always considerate of him? He could not scare him. Shang Junlin slowly exhaled. When he opened his eyes again, the emotions that should not have appeared were completely suppressed. He touched Shun Yu's hair and said, "You did not do anything wrong. You did very well. The state preceptor is very happy, and I am also very happy." It just made the delusions in his heart deepen. If this continued, sooner or later, he would not be able to satisfy his desires. He hoped that he would not scare the young man at that time. The carriage swayed for a few days and finally arrived at the foot of the capital. The news of the miracle in Mount She had also reached the ears of Prince Li and the others. The news of Shun Yu was still kept a secret. The outside world only knew that the emperor brought someone back from Mount Shi and hid him in the palace. No one was allowed to see him. Countless people wanted to find out the identity of the person brought back by the emperor, but they failed. Shin Yu lived in the emperor's palace. The guards outside the palace were changed, and the leader of the hidden dragon guards was personally in charge. The servants in the palace were also reselected by eunuch Meng. At night, Shang Junlin came back after finishing his work in the court. A white-haired young man walked towards him. "Why did you come out? I heard from Meng Yuan that there is a big bath in the palace. I want to take a look." It was the first time Shin Yu came to the palace. Everything was new to him. Shang Junlin stopped in his tracks and said, "Why didn't you ask the palace servants to take you there?" "I don't want to go with anyone else. I only want to go with you," Shin Yu answered without thinking. During the day, he stayed in the palace and did not go out. Only when he was with Shang Junlin, he could completely relax and try new things. Shang Junlin was stunned by his answer. He asked jokingly, "You like me that much?" "Yes." Shun Yu nodded. Genius 1 second. Remember this website, www.bq50cc literature mobile version website, mbq50cc. Chapter 278. It's not the right time yet. Shang Junlin warned himself in his heart. Of course, he knew that the young man didn't like him, but this kind of trust was too hard to resist. The young emperor didn't intend to resist. "Meng Chong, go and arrange it." "Yes." Eunuch Meng bowed his head and left. "I'll go and change my clothes first." Shang Junlin took Shin Yu to the bedroom and asked, "Are you used to staying in the palace?" "It's good here." After receiving Shang Junlin's orders, the palace servants who were transferred to serve in the sleeping quarters all knew that the identity of the people living inside was extraordinary. Because they had been warned in advance, they did their best. Knowing that Shun Yu was curious about things in the mortal world, Shang Junlin also sent him a lot of books and folk toys. Shang Junlin went into the inner room and changed into a set of light clothes. Shin Yu looked at him and asked, "Do I need to change my clothes? I thought you wouldn't wear mortal clothes." Shang Junlin didn't think about changing Shin Yu's clothes, but he was afraid that it would be disrespectful. Since the young man appeared, he had been wearing a white robe. Shang Junlin asked the state preceptor, and the state preceptor said that the immortals' clothes were all transmogrified with magic, so they wouldn't be stained with the filth of the mortal world. Shang Junlin also touched Shun Yu's clothes. It was cold to the touch, like touching a cloud. He couldn't feel the real touch. This kind of material couldn't be produced in the mortal world. Shun Yu looked down at his clothes, which were transmogrified according to the description of the mortal world. "My clothes are not the same as yours." Shang Junlin saw that Shun Yu didn't feel offended, so he found a set of clothes that he hadn't worn before and handed it to him. "I haven't worn these clothes yet. If you like them, I'll ask the Imperial Household Department to make a few new sets for you tomorrow." Shin Yu took it over. Shang Junlin's clothes were mostly black, and the one in Shan Yu's hands was also black. She curiously turned it over a few times, and a soft white light flashed. When the white light was extinguished, Shin Yu had already put on the clothes. Shang Junlin wanted to ask, "Do you need my help?" but he could only swallow his words. Shang Junlin was a little taller than Xinyu, so the fitting clothes were a little too big for Xinyu. Shang Junlin walked closer and lifted the hem of the clothes for him. Zhaohua Palace. The huge bathtub was located in the center of Zhaohua Palace. Steam was rising from the bathtub. Eunuch Ming led a few palace servants to sprinkle flower petals into the bathtub. After everything was ready, Eunuch Ming asked the others to leave and waited alone for the arrival of Xinyu and Shang Junlin. When they came closer, Eunuch Ming couldn't help but open his eyes wide, because he saw the clothes of the young man walking beside the emperor. As the emperor, even if he was wearing casual clothes, Shang Junlin's clothes were embroidered with dragon patterns that symbolized his status, and the young man's clothes were embroidered with dark dragon patterns. It was obvious that the young man's clothes belonged to Shang Junlin. His Majesty actually let the immortal wear his clothes. After a moment of surprise, Eunuch Ming quickly adjusted his emotions. No matter how many waves were in his heart, he didn't show it on his face. "You can leave first." Walking into the main hall, the hot air hit their faces. The bathtub was in the center of the main hall, and it occupied a large area. The bathtub was filled with flower petals, and the bottom couldn't be seen. Seeing the bathtub full of flower petals, Shang Junlin sighed in relief. At the same time, a faint sense of loss emerged in his heart. Shaking off this feeling that shouldn't have appeared, Shang Junlin said, "Take off your outerwear before you go in." Hearing this, Xinyu, who was squatting by the bathtub, stood up. "You don't have to wear everything, no?" In order to prevent him from saying something more damaging, Shang Junlin hurriedly pulled him up and took off his outerwear, shoes, and socks. "Okay, just go down like this." Barefoot, Xinyu stepped on the jade steps and walked step by step into the bathtub. The temperature of the bathtub was just right. His body submerged in the water, and his soaked black robe stuck to his shoulders. The water droplets slid down and meandered down, and below his shoulders were covered by the red flower petals. "It's so comfortable." Xinyu found a place near the edge and squinted comfortably. "Is His Majesty not coming down?" Shang Junlin took off his outerwear and went into the water. He chose a place not far from Xinyu and waited. After soaking for a while, Shang Junlin felt movement beside him. When he opened his eyes, he saw the young man swimming to his side, bringing with him a burst of hot air. Xinyu felt that Shang Junlin was too far away from him. Seeing that the man was resting with his eyes closed, he swam over and used the man's shoulder as a support point to lean on. Soft hair rubbed against the side of his face. Shang Junlin tilted his head, picked up a strand of silver hair floating on the water, and twirled it around his fingertips. A Yu's hair is so long. Are all immortals like this? This was the first time Shang Junlin had asked him about immortals. Xinyu lifted a strand of his hair and replied, "The length of hair can be changed for us. In fact, my real hair is a little longer than it is now, but it's inconvenient if it's too long. A Yu's hair has already reached his ankles. If it's longer, won't it reach the ground?" Shang Junlin remembered the stories about immortals that he had heard from the state preceptor. He asked curiously, "There's a saying in the world that the length of an immortal's hair represents the immortal's power. A Yu has such long hair, can summon the wind and rain, and solve many droughts. It's obvious that he's a very powerful immortal." It was unknown whether it was because of the hot air or because of Shang Junlin's praise, but the young man's skin was dyed red. His originally white skin looked even fairer under the black robe, like the first snow falling on the branches. Shang Junlin watched the young man's snow-white skin slowly being dyed red, and his throat moved. This was the torture of happiness. However, the young man was unaware of the changes on Shang Junlin's body. He still rubbed against his shoulder and shook his head slightly. "He's not that powerful." Shang Junlin couldn't help but rub the young man's head. "You will always be the most powerful in my eyes." With the power of the country, he would let the young man enjoy the best of everything. Xinyu was happy to be praised by his friend. He raised his head, and his eyes sparkled. "Your Majesty, do you want to see how I look with my long hair? Yu is willing to show it to me?" Shang Junlin's eyes gradually darkened. After having the idea of making an immortal stay, Shang Junlin, who didn't care much about ghosts and immortals, spent a lot of effort to understand these things. It was rumored that immortals wouldn't easily reveal their real names, nor would they reveal their true identities in front of the world. However, Xinyu didn't hide these 2 points from him. He could feel Xinyu's trust and dependence on him from their interactions. Although it was strange for an immortal to rely on a mortal, even if the mortal was the son of heaven, Shang Junlin clearly felt it. He didn't think it was his illusion. Some of Xinyu's actions clearly showed his trust and dependence on him. Xinyu didn't intend to hide it at all, such as now. I'll show it to your majesty after the bath. Xinyu didn't think there was anything wrong with showing it to others. However, why did Shang Junlin's emotions fluctuate so much after hearing his answer? In addition to being happy, there seemed to be many other emotions that he couldn't understand. Mortals' thoughts were so complicated and hard to understand. After soaking for a while, Shang Junlin got out of the bath first. On one hand, it was bad for the body to soak for too long. On the other hand, he was worried that he would make a fool of himself if he continued to soak. After Xinyu swam to his side, he didn't intend to leave. His breath lingered around him. The person who made him feel tempted was still wearing his underwear and didn't guard against him at all. Shang Junlin walked behind the screen to change his clothes. He felt that he had used up all his patience at this moment. After Shang Junlin left, Xinyu lay on the edge of the bath. He felt that soaking alone wasn't as interesting as soaking with Shang Junlin. He brushed away the petals in front of him and stepped on the jade steps. The sound of water could be heard. Shang Junlin was worried that Xinyu would have an accident if he left him alone, so he hurriedly tidied himself up and walked out. He saw the white-haired young man in black walking barefoot up the jade steps. The loose clothes were soaked and stuck to the young man's body, outlining his perfect figure. His slender waist was like snow, and even his hair was pure white without a speck of dust. Only the clothes on his body were black, the color that belonged to him. Shang Junlin's unquenchable desire surged again. He smiled bitterly in his heart, picked up the cloak on the screen, and walked over to wrap the young man up. What's wrong? Xinyu didn't understand. You're not soaking anymore? Shang Junlin tried not to let his gaze fall on the young man. Your majesty isn't soaking anymore. Why should I? It's my fault. If you want, I'll accompany you next time. Change your wet clothes first. Xinyu originally wanted to say that he could dry his clothes, but seeing how busy Shang Junlin was for him, he silently swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth and obediently changed his clothes. The two soaked for a long time. When they returned to the bedroom, it was already late at night. Shang Junlin helped Xinyu settle down and turned to leave. It's late. Your Majesty, aren't you going to sleep? Xinyu saw that Shang Junlin was about to leave and asked. During the day, he had learned from the palace servants that this bedroom belonged to the emperor. Before he came, Shang Junlin lived here. He wasn't an ordinary person and didn't need to sleep every day. If Shang Junlin gave him the bedroom and caused him to have no place to sleep, he wouldn't be happy. This is your bedroom. If you don't have a place to sleep because of my arrival, I'd better leave. I'm going out for a while. Shang Junlin hurriedly interrupted him when he heard that he was about to leave. How can I not have a place to sleep? I'm just busy with something. I'll be back soon, okay? Xinyu stared at the man, as if he was judging whether his words were true or not. It's true. You can wait for me for a while. If I don't come back, you can go find me. Yu is an immortal. It won't be too difficult for him to find me. Xinyu nodded hesitantly. He knew that to be a good emperor in the human world, he would be very busy. After Shang Junlin returned to the palace from Mount Shi, he had been busy with government affairs. After comforting Xinyu, Shang Junlin walked out of the bedroom and sighed. He didn't lie to Xinyu. Just now, the state preceptor came to the palace and asked to see him. He said that Prince Li had made a new discovery. Of course, he urgently needed to find something to divert his attention. Otherwise, he really couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't do something when he was in the same room with Xinyu in this situation. Your Majesty. Finally, the emperor came. The state preceptor was about to speak when he was interrupted. State preceptor, I want to ask you, if I want to keep an immortal for a long time, what should I do? Your Majesty, you can't. When His Majesty said that he wanted to bring an immortal back to the palace, he faintly guessed that it was true. The state preceptor was so shocked that he even forgot the purpose of his visit. Blasphemy is a serious crime. Your Majesty, please think twice. I don't want to hear this. I just want to know how to keep an immortal. Genius 1 Second Remember website www.bq50 cc literature mobile version reading URL mbq50 cc. Chapter 279. The state preceptor looked troubled. He had been in this position since before His Majesty ascended to the throne. Of course, he knew that His Majesty was a man of his word. It wasn't that he didn't want to say it, but that he really didn't know. He was devoted to Tao, so why would he think about how to force an immortal to stay in the mortal world? In his heart, it was already a great blessing to see an immortal in his lifetime. How could he have such a rebellious idea? What? Seeing that the state preceptor refused to say, Shang Junlin lost his patience. There are so many capable people in the world. Even if the state preceptor doesn't want to say it, I believe there will be someone who can tell me. Your Majesty, please calm down. Feeling Shang Junlin's anger, the state preceptor knelt down. It's not that I don't want to say it, but I'm not sure if there's a way. I'll go back and read the ancient books. Whether I succeed or not, I'll give Your Majesty an answer. I'll give you 7 days. It's best if you can give me a satisfactory answer. Shang Junlin's index finger tapped on the armrest of the chair. The heavy pressure disappeared, and the state preceptor breathed a sigh of relief. Yes, Your Majesty. Get up. Tell me about Prince Li. Shang Junlin didn't forget the reason why the state preceptor came to the palace. The state preceptor stood up and said, in the past few days, I've found the evil figure who caused a disaster 10 years ago around Prince Li, combined with the disappearance of young girls in and around the capital. It's very likely that this evil figure is behind it, including this large-scale drought. State preceptor, are you saying that this drought is man-made? Shang Junlin sat up straight and narrowed his eyes dangerously. But didn't the state preceptor say that this is a tribulation that should happen to Dahuan? Previously, because it involved the fate of the country, the mysteries of heaven couldn't be easily seen. The result of my divination was correct, but some details were blurred. This time, after returning from Mount Shi, I did another divination. The divination showed that someone wanted to take advantage of the natural disaster to harm Dahuan and Your Majesty. Due to the blessing of the gods, the imperial preceptor's cultivation had improved a lot after the trip to Mount Pars. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to discover the hidden danger. That evil cultivator is unscrupulous in order to achieve his goal. He should have been killed 10 years ago, but I don't know why he escaped. This time he came back and stood on the side of Prince Li. Your Majesty must be careful. We will pay attention. After witnessing the existence of immortals with his own eyes, Shang Junlin would no longer be as dismissive as before. The state preceptor reminded him of some precautions and left with a worried look. To Dahuan, being able to obtain the help of an immortal was the most fortunate thing. Throughout history, which dynasty had encountered such a thing? Unfortunately, the current emperor had designs on immortals that he shouldn't have. No one knew whether this matter would lead to a happy ending or become an even greater disaster in the end. If an immortal was angered, how could a mortal bear the wrath of an immortal? No one knew about the state preceptor's worries. After sending the state preceptor away, Shang Junlin returned to his bedroom. Xinyu hadn't fallen asleep yet when he heard the approaching footsteps. He opened the curtain and asked, Your Majesty, why have you been gone for so long? There was an imperceptible anger in his tone. Shang Junlin's footsteps paused. The young man was wearing his pajamas. The white pajamas were a little too big, revealing his snow-white skin. The young man knelt on the bed. His long white hair hung down, covering the black mattress embroidered with golden dragon patterns. The man's eyes darkened, and he sat on the edge of the bed. We made you wait for a long time. It's not that long. Xinyu moved over. Is it something difficult? No, it's not a big deal. Shang Junlin touched the young man's long hair. He didn't want these dirty things to dirty the young man's ears. It's very late. You should rest first. Note, mortals needed to sleep at night. It was indeed late. Xinyu nodded and stepped back into the bed. Your Majesty, come up quickly. The The dragon bed for the emperor was very big. It was more than enough for Shen Yu and Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin asked the palace servants to prepare 2 quilts. After covering Shen Yu with one of the quilts, he went asleep. Shen Yu lay on the bed and felt Shang Junlin's breath come and go. He blinked and looked sideways at the man lying on the other side. When Shen Yu saw Shang Junlin for the first time, he felt that this man's appearance was not worse than any of the gods he had seen. His facial features were sharp, and his eyebrows and eyes were sharp. He was the type of appearance that Shen Yu liked the most. The man closed his eyes. His long eyelashes cast a shadow under his eyes. Shen Yu couldn't help but move closer to count his thick eyelashes. Not long after lying down, Shang Junlin heard a rustling sound. Then, another person's breath came closer. What's wrong? Shang Junlin opened his eyes and looked sideways at the young man who had already moved closer to him. Shen Yu was stunned. He didn't understand why he suddenly moved closer. He looked at the quilts that covered him and Shang Junlin separately. He asked in a puzzled tone, "Why do we need to cover ourselves with 2 quilts? You want to share a quilt with me?" Shang Junlin raised his eyebrows. After saying that, he didn't wait for Shen Yu to answer. He reached out and pulled Shen Yu into his quilt. "Is this okay?" His scalding body temperature came through the thin clothes. Shen Yu didn't know why he wanted to shrink back, but this time, the man didn't follow his wishes. He firmly locked him in his arms with his strong arms. "Don't move." His voice was slightly hoarse. Shen Yu lowered his eyes and leaned on the man. His body was infected with another person's warmth. His heart gradually calmed down, and he fell asleep unknowingly. What he didn't know was that after he fell asleep, the man looked at him with a complicated gaze for a long time. Then, he gently and reservedly kissed his forehead and fell asleep with him in his arms. It was a dreamless night. When he woke up in the morning, Shang Junlin looked at the young man who was sleeping soundly in his arms and the white hair that covered his chest. He moved back a little. Unexpectedly, before he could move back, the young man leaned closer to him and rubbed his head against his neck. Shang Junlin took a deep breath and calmed his restless body. It was too exciting in the morning. Shang Junlin looked down at the young man's peaceful sleeping face. He had an impulse to touch his forehead. However, he was the one who made the decision to let the young man live in his bedchamber. This kind of accompanying sweet torture could only be endured by him. Eunuch Meng walked in with light steps. "Your Majesty, it's time to get up." Shang Junlin carefully pulled Shen Yu out of his arms and got up to put on his clothes. After putting on the heavy imperial robes, the man turned back into the decisive young emperor. Only when he looked at the young man did a touch of gentleness appear in his eyes. "Don't wake him up. This slave understands." Eunuch Meng lowered his head and tidied up Shang Junlin's imperial robes. He didn't dare to look at him. When Shen Yu woke up, Shang Junlin had already gone to court, and he was the only one on the bed. Shen Yu, who had just woken up, was a little confused. The bedchamber was quiet. After a while, Shen Yu remembered that he followed Shang Junlin to the Dehuan Imperial Palace. Not long after he woke up, Shang Junlin came back from court. In order to be able to spend more time with Shen Yu, he moved his official business to the bedchamber to deal with it. Recently, the imperial court was very busy. In addition to the drought, there was also the case of the missing young girls. Since a month ago, young girls had been disappearing one after another. In recent days, the number of missing people had increased exponentially. Shang Junlin knew from the state preceptor that this matter was related to evil, so he asked the state preceptor's residents to send people to help deal with it. These things didn't affect Shen Yu, who lived deep in the palace. Those who had the opportunity to get close to him were screened over and over again to ensure that there was no problem with their identity. The bedchamber was also protected by layers of protection. Those who wanted to inquire about Shan Yu's news all returned without success. Prince Li's residence. After so many days, there is still no news at all? Prince Li looked at his kneeling subordinates with displeasure. "Your Highness, please forgive us." The subordinates' foreheads touched the ground. Cold sweat soaked their backs. It wasn't that they were weak, but this time the emperor blocked the news too tightly. No matter what they did, they couldn't find any news about the miracle of Mount Parting. "You can't even do such a small thing. What's the use of me raising you?" Your Highness, you don't have to be angry about this. In order to block the news, even the state preceptor went out this time. It's normal that your people can't find anything. Su Daozhong walked in slowly. Prince Li took a deep breath and said to his subordinates kneeling on the ground, "You go first." When there were only 2 people left in the room, Prince Li said, "Su Daozhong, you came here. Is the matter done?" "Don't worry, Your Highness. This humble Taoist has already brought it. As long as you place it beside that person, it will be able to absorb his luck for Your Highness to use." With that, Taoist Su took out a piece of black jade that glowed faintly from his sleeve. When the horsetail whisk brushed it, the dim light became golden. The originally strange jade was suddenly filled with auspicious qi. Seeing this, Prince Li's knitted brows loosened. "Thank you, Daozhong." The next thing he had to think about was how to deliver this jade stone to his good brother. As if he knew what he was worried about, Su Daozhong smiled mysteriously. "Your Highness, you don't have to worry. Soon, there will be an excellent opportunity to present the jade." In the afternoon, Shang Junlin took Xinyu to walk around the imperial palace. Shang Junlin found that if he didn't take Xinyu with him, Xinyu would rather stay in the palace than go out for a walk. He had to prepare all kinds of toys to put in the palace. There were all kinds of toys, including all kinds of toys suitable for children to play with. This caused people to begin to speculate whether the imperial palace was going to welcome another owner. In a way, this conjecture was partially true. In addition to these, Shang Junlin also asked people to buy a lot of storybooks because he found that Xinyu liked to listen to stories. If he had time, he would read them. If he didn't, eunuch Meng's godson, Meng Yuan, would read them. The scenery in the imperial garden was beautiful. The pavilion in the middle of the flowers had been decorated comfortably. The stone bench was covered with a thick blanket, and the pavilion was surrounded by gauze. There were all kinds of snacks and fruits on the stone table. When Xinyu came to the imperial palace, Shang Junlin used the excuse that the imperial palace had a lot of delicious food. After bringing him back to the imperial palace, in order to fulfill his promise, he ordered the imperial kitchen to prepare different dishes every day. Xinyu had lived in the imperial palace for a few days, but he hadn't eaten the same dishes. Shang Junlin was holding a storybook in his hand, which was said to be very popular recently. The man's voice was low as he narrated the story in the book. Xinyu supported his chin and looked at the man, listening very carefully. He saw the fox-eared boy sneak into the prime minister's bedroom. At the most important part, Shang Junlin suddenly stopped. Xinyu waited for a while, but didn't hear anything else. He opened his eyes slightly. "Why did your majesty stop reading?" Shang Junlin tightened his grip on the book. He glanced at the young man who was still in a daze and continued, "Take off your clothes and walk straight to the bedside. Your Excellency saved this servant's family. This servant should repay your kindness." Genius 1 second. Remember this website. www.bq50cc Literature Mobile Version Website. mbq50cc. Chapter 280. Shang Junlin almost blurted out his agreement, but he stopped himself and asked, "If that's the case, is you willing to accept it?" The man's dark eyes stared unblinkingly at the young man in front of him. His eyes were filled with stars, and they were the most beautiful eyes Xinyu had ever seen. Being stared at by such a focused gaze, Xinyu rarely felt restrained. He thought, would he be willing? That kind of intimate contact in the novel, the fox-eared young man and the prime minister went to Mount Wu to have sex. Outside the novel, the emperor in black was focused, and the young man in white was slightly lost in thought. After a long time, just as Shang Junlin was about to break the silence, Xinyu opened his mouth. If the person who saved the little fox demon's family wasn't the prime minister, would he be willing to use this method to repay his kindness? The little fox demon admires the prime minister. That's why he was willing to do this. Shang Junlin answered. Xinyu was deep in thought. Shang Junlin touched the young man's head and explained, "They are both in love with each other. That's why they used this method to repay their kindness. If it was someone else, they might have used another method to repay their kindness." Shang Junlin's remaining conscience made him tell the truth. Although he was moved, he didn't want to use this method to keep Xinyu. What he wanted was never some kind of greed. Shin Yu nodded as if he understood. He had never thought about love in the human world. Since he was born, he had spent most of his time in deep sleep, so he knew very little about the mortal world. This time, he appeared in Mount Shi, and it was the first time he took the initiative to enter the mortal world. "How's the drought in Dahuan?" Shin Yu asked when he remembered the reason he was awakened. "Some places have already started to rain, but there are some places that haven't shown any signs of rain except for a light rain after the ceremony." Originally, the capital was also affected by the drought. After Shin Yu appeared, there were several heavy rains in the capital. The drought had been resolved, and it was the same in several other places. However, there were still some places where the drought had not been alleviated. For example, the situation in Qingzhou, the last place affected by the drought, had not improved at all. Shang Junlin did not hide anything and told him the truth. In the end, he said, You don't have to worry. She's much better now." Shin Yu lowered his eyes and pondered. He faintly felt that something was wrong. He was very confident in his own ability. After he cast the spell, the result should not have been like this. The news brought by the imperial tutor confirmed this conjecture. "Your Majesty, I found a strange place in Qingzhou. Several of my disciples died there. The disciples who escaped brought back news that one of the sources of this year's drought is in that place." In the imperial study, the imperial preceptor brought the latest news. "Qingzhou. If I remember correctly, Qingzhou is part of King Li's fiefdom, right?" Shang Junlin tapped his index finger on the table. It was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. "Yes, half of Qingzhou is part of King Li's fiefdom. That place is in King Li's fiefdom. Not only that, I also heard from Lord Fong that some of the missing girls had gone there." Lord Fong nodded. "That's right. Your Majesty, if it were not for the imperial preceptor's disciples, I would not have been able to find these clues." Shang Junlin narrowed his eyes. "Fong Jun, I order you to lead a group of hidden dragon guards to Qingzhou. You must investigate this matter thoroughly." "Yes, Your Majesty. I'll have to trouble the imperial preceptor to continue working on this matter. Only a cultivator like the imperial preceptor could solve this problem when it involved inhuman factors." Shang Junlin always knew how to make good use of people. After returning to the bedroom, Shang Junlin reported the progress of this matter to Shin Yu. "On the day I woke up from my deep sleep, I felt that this drought was a little unusual," Shin Yu said after listening. "You was also the result of divination?" Shang Junlin was curious. "There's no need for divination. It's just a kind of feeling. The gods can communicate with the heavens and earth and can sense some of the heavenly secrets. However, this drought is indeed a tribulation that Dahuan should face. It involves the fate of the country and cannot be easily sensed." Shang Junlin understood. It was no wonder that the imperial preceptor could not divine the exact answer after so many divinations. The imperial preceptor was a little anxious recently. It was not because of the Qingzhou matter, but because of another order from Shang Junlin. The imperial preceptor could not find a way to make the immortals stay after going through the ancient books. This was not strange. People only had two attitudes towards the immortals. Who would have such a rebellious idea just to keep the immortals by their side? The movements in the imperial preceptor's residence were reported back to the Prince Li's residence by well-hidden spies. Are there really gods in this world? In the study, Prince Li asked Su Daozhong, who was dressed in a Taoist robe. Su Daozhong, of course there are. Did your highness forget that there are gods in Qingzhou? Prince Li. The emperor asked the imperial preceptor to find a way to imprison the immortals. Could it be that the miracle in Mount Shi was really brought by the immortals? Then the person he secretly brought back to the palace was not a prisoner, but an immortal? Su Daozhong. If so, your highness, isn't this our chance? Prince Li. What do you mean? Su Daozhong. Your highness, think about it. The imperial preceptor can't do it, but I can. It just so happens that the one in Qingzhou can't hold on for long. Now that a new god is sent to our door, isn't it a good thing for us? Prince Li. Even so, how can you be sure that the immortal can be controlled by us? Besides, the immortal is in the hands of my good brother. We can't even see him. Su Daozhong. The emperor did not announce this matter to the world, but concealed the news of the immortal. Your Highness, do you think the immortal is really willing to do this? A dignified immortal is imprisoned in the palace by the emperor of the mortal world. What is this? Princely. In that case, I will think of a way to meet the immortal first. As for the rest, I will leave it to Daozhong. Su Daozhong, Your Highness, don't worry. No one knew the secret of the two. Xinyu was somewhat concerned about the matter in Qingzhou, so he proposed to Shang Junlin to go to Qingzhou to have a look. I have already sent someone. You and I will wait for the result together, okay? Shang Junlin didn't want Xinyu to leave at this time. Now he regretted telling Xinyu about Qingzhou. I will be back soon. For an immortal, going back and forth was just a matter of a moment. Shang Junlin certainly knew, but he didn't want Xinyu to leave. He was afraid that after he left, he would feel that he didn't need to come back. If Xinyu didn't come back, what should he do? The world was so big. Where could he go to find him? For the first time, Shang Junlin felt the weakness of a mortal. So what if he was the emperor? If Xinyu really wanted to leave, he couldn't stop him. He should lock him in a place where only he could see him, so that he could only see him in his heart. Suppressing the dark emotions in his heart, Shang Junlin said in a deep voice, I will go with you. No need. Seeing the firm expression on the man's face, Xinyu swallowed the words of refusal. This time, Shang Junlin went on a private tour. The matters in the imperial court were handed over to the prime minister and the others. He secretly went to Qingzhou with Xinyu. When the state preceptor in Qingzhou received the news, Shang Junlin had already arrived near Qingzhou with Xinyu. How can His Majesty act so recklessly? Official Feng didn't know about the existence of immortals, so he didn't understand why His Majesty would take such a risk. His Majesty chose to come in person, so he naturally has his reasons. With the immortals around, the state preceptor wasn't worried about His Majesty's safety. In order to not attract attention, Xinyu turned his white hair black and changed into the clothes prepared by Shang Junlin. He looked more like a pampered son of an aristocratic family. When he met up with the state preceptor and the others, the state preceptor was surprised to see the black-haired young man in blue who acted so intimately with Shang Junlin. Since he knew His Majesty's thoughts, the state preceptor had been worried that the immortals would be disturbed one day. Now that he saw the two of them getting along, it seemed that he worried too much. The provincial governor of Qingzhou came to greet His Majesty in fear and trepidation. After knowing Shang Junlin's true identity, he didn't dare to neglect him. Greetings, official. The provincial governor of Qingzhou was told in advance that Shang Junlin came with a hidden identity, so he didn't call out his identity. No need to make a big fuss, just do what you need to do. Since Shang Junlin came in person, he must ask about the progress here. Xinyu wasn't interested in these things. After dinner, he was led to rest by the servants. When they passed by the garden, Xinyu stopped in his tracks. The garden here was certainly not as good as the imperial garden, but it could be seen that the owner took good care of it. The flowers bloomed and were full of vitality. These were planted by Madame. Seeing that he was interested, the servant girl who led the way explained, Madame likes to take care of these things, so Master went around looking for flowers to plant. Can I take a look? Young Master is a distinguished guest. Of course you can. Xinyu walked into the garden. The rich fragrance of flowers assailed his nostrils. All kinds of plants were stretching their bodies. Xinyu could feel that they were being treated with care. Miss, please slow down. When they passed by the corner, a small child suddenly appeared from another road and bumped into Xianyu's leg. Xinyu held the child. The child looked up and saw Xinyu. He exclaimed, It's pretty brother. At this time, the servant girl rushed over. When she saw the young miss beside Xinyu, she didn't know what to do. I want to play with pretty brother for a while. The servant girl looked at Xinyu for help. The servant girl who followed behind Xinyu introduced, This is the second young miss of the Sure household. She has a lively personality. Please forgive her, young master. This was a distinguished guest that the provincial governor specially ordered to be treated well, so the servant girl didn't dare to neglect. It's fine. The little child was about 4 or 5 years old. He was indeed lively. He followed Xinyu and chattered nonstop. Xinyu didn't get tired of it. He only took him away when the provincial governor's wife came. Can I play with pretty brother next time? Being stared at by the little child's sparkling eyes, Shinyu couldn't bear to refuse. After getting a response, the little child was satisfied and went back with the provincial governor's wife. At night, Shang Junlin returned to the courtyard. I heard that the youngest daughter of the Qingzhou provincial governor pestered you to play today. If you don't like it, you can ignore it. Someone would tell Shang Junlin everything that happened around Shinyu. She's very cute. The next morning, a small guest came to the courtyard. Pretty brother, I'm here to play with you. The child's clear voice broke the silence of the courtyard. Shinyu pushed the door open and didn't say anything. Shang Junlin, who followed him out, asked, "Is this the child who pestered you?" Shang Junlin looked down at the child in front of him. The little child was wearing festive red clothes. There were 2 buns on his head and his eyes were clear. He was a very likable child. Of course, for Shang Junlin, no matter how likable he was, if he disturbed Shinyu's time with him, he wouldn't be likable. The man was tall. For the little child, who was less than 5 years old, the pressure was too strong. The little child looked up at Shang Junlin, who was between him and Shinyu. He curled his lips and said, "I'm here to look for pretty brother." Shinyu bypassed Shang Junlin and took the little child to the side. "Why are you here so early?" "I have to learn how to read from the teacher, so I can only come early to play with pretty brother," the little child answered. Shinyu took the little child to the stone table and sat down. He took out the snacks he brought from the capital and asked, "Do you want to eat some?" "Yes." The little child's black eyes looked at Shinyu and the tall man behind him. "Are pretty brother and this big brother also husband and wife?" "Why do you say so?" Shinyu's hands paused. "I saw it. Yesterday, when you got off the carriage, big brother helped pretty brother. When you ate, big brother would pick up food for pretty brother. You two also live in the same house. My father and mother are also like this. My father told me that only husband and wife can live in the same house." Genius 1 second. Remember this website, www.bq50cc literature mobile version website, mbq50cc. Chapter 281. We Are Not. Shinyu opened his mouth to explain. Although he hadn't been in the mortal world for a long time, he still knew what a husband-wife relationship was. "Pretty brother, you don't have to explain. I promise I won't tell anyone." However, Xiao Tuanzi firmly believed that they were husband and wife. She only thought that Shun Yu's explanation was a cover-up. Shun Yu had no choice but to look at Shang Junlin for help. Shang Junlin now found Xiao Tuanzi more pleasing to the eye. He said to Shun Yu, "Children are like this. They have their own set of principles and can only follow. Big brother, you have to be good to pretty brother." Xiao Tuanzi looked at Shang Junlin. He was such a fierce big brother. She didn't know what pretty brother saw in him. "I will. I won't treat anyone badly, but I won't treat you badly," Shang Junlin replied seriously. Xiao Tuanzi was very satisfied with Shang Junlin's awareness. She was not as afraid of him as before. Half an hour later, Xiao Tuanzi reluctantly bid farewell to the two after being reminded by the maid. "After I finish learning today's calligraphy, I will come back to play with pretty brother." The servants of the provincial governor's mansion served a sumptuous breakfast. Shang Junlin put Shun Yu's favorite dishes into his bowl as usual. Shun Yu naturally picked up the dishes in his bowl and put them into his mouth. Xiao Tuanzi's words suddenly floated in his ears. Shun Yu paused. "What's wrong? The dishes are not to your liking?" Shun Yu shook his head and suppressed the strange emotions in his heart. It was just a human cub's words. He couldn't take it seriously. After breakfast, Shang Junlin took Shun Yu out of the mansion. Qingzhou was a relatively prosperous place in Dahuan. After dealing with official business, Shang Junlin wanted to take Shun Yu to sightsee. There were stalls selling all kinds of things on the street. This was the first time that Shun Yu had experienced such things, so he was curious about everything. Shang Junlin was happy to accompany him. Whenever Shun Yu took a second look at something, he would buy it. The Great Huan Dynasty's folk customs were open, and the streets were filled with pairs of men and women. In order to do business, the street vendors had already trained a pair of discerning eyes, and all kinds of pleasantries were spouted out as if they didn't cost money. "Both of you are so handsome. I can tell that you are a loving couple at first glance. Look at this pair of hairpins. It suits your temperament very well. I'm sure it will look even better after you wear it. It can also reflect your deep feelings for each other. The stall owner could tell at first glance that Xinyu and Shang Junlin were not people who lacked money. Thus, he kept on introducing them. We are not. At first, Xinyu would explain seriously. However, after he explained, the person who spoke would only show an "I understand" expression. Although he restrained his words, the meaning in his words didn't change much. After a few times, Xinyu gave up. Xinyu didn't know the language of the mortal world, so he was coaxed to buy a lot of things. Shang Junlin liked it when the stall owners said that he and Xinyu were a couple. He only hoped that they would say more. Naturally, he wouldn't expose them. After a few hours, the two of them had a lot of gains. The hands of the hidden dragon guards who were disguised as ordinary guards behind the two of them were full of things. Other than Xinyu, even Shang Junlin had a lot of things in his hands. At this time, a young couple walked past the two of them. The man's hands were full, while the woman was only holding some light things. She raised her arm and used her sleeve to wipe the sweat on the man's forehead. Xinyu looked at himself, and then looked at Shang Junlin. The man's body was dry, and there was no sign of him sweating. Why don't I take some too? Xinyu was a little embarrassed. Shang Junlin slightly raised the corner of his lips. No need. I can still carry these things. If you is worried, why don't you wipe my sweat for me too? He was just joking. In short, it wasn't difficult for him to carry these things. After he finished speaking, he wanted to continue walking forward. Unexpectedly, the young man beside him suddenly stopped. Then, a gentle breeze blew past his face. The young man looked up and wiped his forehead seriously. Even though the two of them knew that he wasn't sweating at all, Shang Junlin only felt that his heart was beating like a drum. The beast in his heart was impatiently grinding its claws and getting restless. Shang Junlin, who was originally not hot at all, started to heat up from inside out. Xinyu wiped his forehead for a while and stopped. He couldn't understand why he would suddenly do such a thing. It was as if he saw someone else doing the same thing. There was an impulse in his heart. By the time he reacted, it was already done. His raised arm froze for a moment. He was about to withdraw it. Shang Junlin quickly grabbed him with his free hand. His eyes were shining. Now I'm not hot at all. Thank you, you. Of course not. The burning temperature in the palm of his hand passed through his clothes to the place where the man grabbed Xinyu. Then, it spread all the way up. The immortals who were originally unaffected by the temperature of the mortal world felt hot for the first time. The man's burning gaze fell on him. It was as if he had lit an invisible fire on him. Xinyu lowered his head and said softly, I didn't do anything. Do you still want to walk around? Shang Junlin asked. In fact, it was not suitable for him to continue walking around. The young man had lit a fire on him, making him want to do something. Xinyu shook his head. Even if he wanted to, he couldn't do anything in public. Shang Junlin closed his eyes and suppressed the roaring beast in his heart. He let go of the young man's hand. Let's go back first. If you isn't satisfied, we can come out to play next time. When they returned to the provincial governor's mansion, Shang Junlin was called away. Xinyu stayed alone in the courtyard and breathed a sigh of relief. Not long after, Xiao Tuanzi came as promised. After playing for a while, she found that Xinyu was not in high spirits. Xiao Tuanzi curiously asked, Did Big Brother make Pretty Brother angry? Why do you say that? As soon as she spoke, Xinyu remembered what happened in the morning. He also remembered the misunderstanding of his relationship with Shang Junlin outside the mansion. Because Pretty Brother seems to be in a bad mood. Every time Mother is in a bad mood, it's because Father made her angry. Xiao Tuanzi answered matter-of-factly. Xinyu laughed. It has nothing to do with him. I'm thinking about something. He was just thinking about the relationship between him and Shang Junlin. When he promised Shang Junlin to go to the Imperial Palace, he didn't think so much. He just wanted to play for a while and leave when he got tired of it. He could go to other places to play, or go back to Mount Shi to continue sleeping. He never thought that he would develop a relationship beyond friendship with the Emperor of the mortal world. On the second day after Shang Junlin secretly left the capital, Prince Li received the news. According to the information sent back by our spies, this time when we left the capital, this prince's good imperial brother brought a beautiful man with him. Taoist priest, do you think that person could be the immortal who was tricked into entering the palace from Mount Shi? Su Daozhang pinched his fingers and said, the immortal is no longer in the imperial palace. That's good. I was worried that I couldn't find a chance to get close to the immortal who was secretly protected in the imperial palace. Since he's out of the imperial palace, it's much more convenient to do things. Prince Li smiled and felt that even the heavens were on his side. I've already sent people to get close to him. It would be best if we can reach a cooperative relationship with the immortal. Su Daozhang said, the state preceptor has brought people to Qingzhou. Will there be any problems? Your Highness, don't worry. They won't find out. Thinking of the special nature of the item, Prince Li was a little relieved. I've already told the people to take care of the jade you gave me. In a few days, it will be sent to the emperor. Of course, he couldn't personally deliver such a thing. Fortunately, there were many people who wanted to please the emperor. As long as the news was spread, there would be a lot of people who wanted to get it. If they presented it to the emperor and got the emperor's favor, it would be just a matter of a word. Under the secret control of Prince Li, the jade fell into the hands of an official in Qingzhou. Coincidentally, he got the news that the emperor was in Qingzhou. A few days later, the jade was sent to Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin didn't care about these things before, but after seeing the existence of the immortal with his own eyes, he changed his mind. He handed the jade to the state preceptor to see if there was anything wrong with it. For the time being, he didn't have the mood to play with the jade because he found that Shun Yu was intentionally or unintentionally distancing himself from him these days. Previously, under his subtle influence, Shin Yu wouldn't resist getting close to him. But these 2 days, when he wanted to get closer to him, Shin Yu would silently avoid him. Shin Yu came to Qingzhou to investigate what was wrong in Qingzhou. This time, Shang Junlin couldn't hide him from the state preceptor. When Shin Yu deliberately avoided him, he met the state preceptor more often than he did. Shang Junlin was dissatisfied. Every time Shin Yu met the state preceptor, he would take time out no matter how busy he was. His dissatisfaction wasn't directed at Shin Yu. After a few times, the state preceptor couldn't stand it anymore. Not everyone could withstand the cold air of the emperor. After another meeting with the immortal, the state preceptor stopped the emperor who was about to leave with a dark face. Your Majesty, did you do something to make the emperor unhappy? The state preceptor suspected that the emperor couldn't help but do something that made the immortal unhappy. After all, from the previous situation, the emperor didn't seem to intend to endure it for long. I didn't do anything. Shang Junlin also didn't understand why Shin Yu suddenly avoided him. It was very strange that he didn't do anything. From the time he spent with the immortal, it wasn't difficult for the state preceptor to see that the immortal treated the emperor differently from others. Your Majesty, you can ask directly. The immortal's heart doesn't beat around the bush. No matter how you guess, it's better to ask directly. The state preceptor made this suggestion based on the immortal's attitude towards the emperor. The most important thing was that if the two didn't reconcile, he would be the one who would be hurt. After listening to the state preceptor's words, Shang Junlin thought for a long time and felt that he really should talk to Shin Yu. He didn't want the two of them to be in a deadlock. That night, Shang Junlin had originally planned to go and talk to Shin Yu, but who would have thought that something big would happen in Qingzhou? He only had time to get someone to inform Shun Yu before bringing people to deal with it. Late at night, Shun Yu's courtyard welcomed an uninvited guest. It was a small paper man. My lord, the emperor has been held back by our people. If you want to leave, now is the best chance. The paper man said in a strange tone. Shin Yu didn't take this little thing seriously, but its words attracted his attention. This time, it was your master who did it? The paper man didn't answer this question. Instead, it said, this is a rare opportunity. Are you willing to be trapped by a mortal forever? You should be an immortal above the ninth heaven, unrestrained by anything. But now you have to pretend to be obedient. Shun Yu made a gesture, and the paper man suddenly quieted down. You are too noisy. Shun Yu said. Shun Yu's face turned cold after he sensed it. He moved his fingers, and the paper man instantly turned into ashes. Shang Junlin was injured. Xinyu stood up, pushed the door open, and walked out. At this moment, there was a noise and approaching footsteps in the front yard. There was a faint smell of blood and an imperceptible stench in the air. Xinyu looked up. "Where is the doctor? Have you sent someone to invite him?" There was an anxious voice in the crowd. "I have already sent someone. He is still bleeding. Why can't it be stopped?" There was obvious panic in the voice. Not long after, Xinyu saw Shang Junlin, who was supported by someone. The man's face was pale, and his breath was much weaker than it was during the day. Xinyu also felt that Shang Junlin's vitality was constantly flowing away. The smell of blood and the unknown stench was even stronger. Suddenly, there was an extra person in front of them. Everyone noticed it. Seeing that it was Xinyu, Shang Junlin struggled to stand up straight. He subconsciously pretended that his injury was not serious. He didn't want the young man to worry. In fact, he didn't look so bad now. His black clothes were soaked with blood, and it was hard to see it in the night. However, Shun Yu was a god, and he could feel that the man's vitality was constantly weakening. Genius 1 second. Remember this website, www.bq50cc literature mobile version website, mbq50cc. Chapter 282. Xun Yu walked towards Shang Junlin. "I'm fine. Don't worry." Shang Junlin saw the worry on his face and comforted him softly. "You lost so much blood. How can you be fine?" Xun Yu stretched out his hand without thinking. Shang Junlin shook his head at him and said, "Let's go back first." He didn't want Xun Yu to expose himself in such a situation. His hand was held tightly. Xun Yu had no choice but to follow Shang Junlin's wishes. Shang Junlin didn't let go of Xun Yu's hand until he was placed on the bed. The doctor came quickly. The subordinates stepped aside, and the unimportant people were sent out. Shang Junlin used a lot of willpower to keep himself from fainting. The man leaned against the bed. His lips were pale. Because of the loss of blood, he felt dizzy. The doctor carefully cut open the man's clothes on his chest, revealing the hideous wound. It seemed that something had scratched him. There were 3 deep scratches on his chest. Dirty blood kept oozing out. Even with the best medicine, it didn't work. The doctor had never seen such a strange injury. He stroked his beard and pondered. Xun Yu knew that the wound didn't heal because it was contaminated. It was this dirty aura that nibbled away the man's vitality. Xun Yu stood up suddenly and said, "You guys go out first." Those who stayed were Shang Junlin's confidants. They knew that Shang Junlin valued Xun Yu. They looked at Shang Junlin immediately. "You guys go out first," Shang Junlin said. In a short time, Shang Junlin's condition worsened. Xun Yu knew that he had to get rid of the residue on the man's wound as soon as possible. Otherwise, the situation would only get worse. The doctor was also taken out. In the blink of an eye, only Xun Yu and Shang Junlin were left in the room. Shang Junlin stared at Xun Yu without blinking. He knew that his condition was very bad. From the moment he was injured, he knew that the injury this time was different from the previous ones. That kind of overbearing power was constantly wreaking havoc in his meridians, as if it wanted to destroy everything. Just as he was about to say something, a metallic taste rose up in his throat, and he could only swallow back the words he had yet to say. Although Shang Junlin tried his best to restrain himself, Xun Yu could still feel the intense pain he was suffering. Without further delay, Xun Yu walked to the bedside. At the same time, a white light gathered in his hand. The white light was sent to the wound on his chest and slowly sank in. The burning sensation of being burned by the fire faded away, and Shang Junlin only felt a cool energy spreading through his body, repairing the places that had been destroyed one by one. After doing all this, Xun Yu's furrowed brows didn't loosen because the white light could only repair the wounds on the body, but it had no effect on the loss of vitality. "I'm much better now. You don't have to worry anymore." Shang Junlin raised his hand and stroked the young man's eyebrows. Xun Yu thought of something and stretched out his hand. The white light flashed, and a wound appeared on his white wrist. "What are you doing?" Shang Junlin didn't care about his injury and sat up straight. The wound on his chest had stopped bleeding, but because of his violent movements, blood gushed out again. Shun Yu put his bleeding wrist to Shang Junlin's lips. "Drink a little." Shang Junlin was shocked. He wanted to refuse, but Shun Yu didn't give him a chance. He moved his wrist forward and put it on Shang Junlin's lips. As if it had a life of its own, his lips touched the skin on his wrist. In an instant, the blood was poured into Shang Junlin's mouth. With just a little bit, Shun Yu withdrew his hand. The blood of immortals was very nourishing for mortals. If Shang Junlin's vitality hadn't been damaged too badly, Shin Yu wouldn't have fed him his own blood directly. Shang Junlin swallowed the blood. He didn't taste the blood, and only a sweet taste remained in his mouth. The effect was immediate. Not long after, Shang Junlin's face was no longer as pale as paper, and his lips gradually became rosy. The doctor was called in again to bandage Shang Junlin's wound. He was very curious about how the young man standing beside the bed stopped the bleeding, but he didn't dare to ask. Before he came, he had been warned that the person he was treating was a big shot, and he couldn't say a word about what happened tonight. After bandaging the wound, the doctor checked the man's pulse and then went to prescribe medicine. Many of the people Shang Junlin brought with him were killed, and some of them were injured. Like Shang Junlin, they were injured by an unknown thing. They were bleeding profusely, and their wounds couldn't heal for a long time. The state preceptor rushed over when he heard the news. When he saw that Shang Junlin's wounds were treated, he heaved a sigh of relief. "Fortunately, Your Majesty is fine." Shang Junlin was lying on the bed, and his expression was obscure. "The monster was hiding in the dark and followed me all the way. I only noticed it after it attacked me." Shang Junlin told him what happened tonight. He had finished his business and planned to come back, but he didn't expect to encounter a thick fog after entering a forest. In the fog, an indistinct monster appeared and attacked them. "Many of the people who came back with me were injured. State Preceptor, please take a look at them later." This monster can devour a person's vitality. A white flower appeared on Shun Yu's fingertip. He manipulated the flower to fly in front of the state preceptor. "Put this flower in the water and let them consume it. It will heal their injuries as soon as possible." It was a flower of an unknown species. Its petals were layered, and the edges of the petals were shining with white light. It didn't look like an ordinary flower. The state preceptor hurriedly kept the flower. "Thank you, immortal." Seeing that Shang Junlin didn't need him, the state preceptor took the flower and left. Before he left, he couldn't help but look back, wondering if the conflict between His Majesty and the immortal had been resolved. He happened to see His Majesty holding the immortal's hand, so the state preceptor quickly looked away. "Why did you feed his blood to me?" Shang Junlin stared into Shun Yu's eyes, trying to find an answer. He could still feel the young man's skin on his lips. It was delicate and cool. "My blood can replenish the vitality lost in your body in the shortest time possible. Other than the immortal's blood, there were other things that could do this, such as the flower he had conjured. However, these things were not as effective as his blood. At that time, Shinyu didn't think much about it and did it directly. Next time, don't give your blood to others so easily." Shang Junlin sighed in his heart. He didn't want to push people too hard. Moreover, Shun Yu's performance tonight gave him some confidence. Shin Yu treated him differently. "I know. If it weren't for His Majesty, I wouldn't have used this method so easily." Shang Junlin drank his blood, so he was bound to him. From now on, he would no longer be free and unfettered in this world. Hearing this answer, Shang Junlin's heart softened. "Is you worried about me today?" "He's still very unhappy." Shun Yu nodded. He told Shang Junlin about the paper figurines that appeared in his room before he came back. "Does His Majesty know who did this?" Shang Junlin's face turned cold. "They still want to make a move on you?" Shang Junlin could tolerate any kind of ambition in the struggle for power and profit. However, they wanted to take Shin Yu away from him. This was his reverse scale that couldn't be touched. Touching it would mean death. "I will never do anything that goes against your wishes." Shang Junlin held Shun Yu's hand tightly. He was scared. He didn't dare to think about what would happen if those people succeeded and Shin Yu left him. The boiled medicine was served. Shin Yu wanted to get up, but he was stopped by the man. "You, don't leave me." "I won't go." Shang Junlin was seriously injured. Even though he drank Shen Yu's blood, he still felt a little warm. Shen Yu could feel that the hand holding his wrist was much warmer than usual. His Majesty, drink the medicine first. Shang Junlin refused to look away. Even if he drank the medicine, he still had to look at him. Sick people were unreasonable. Shen Yu had no choice but to sit by the bed and accompany him. When everything was done, the sky was almost bright. Shang Junlin's complexion was a lot better, but he still looked a little tired. You has also been busy all night. Sleep with me for a while? Shang Junlin held Shen Yu's wrist and rubbed the center of it with his fingers. The wound here had already healed, but Shang Junlin would never forget what Shen Yu had done for him. I'm not sleepy, Shen Yu said. He didn't need to sleep. Staying up all night didn't affect him. Just treat it as keeping me company. I can only be at ease with you by my side. The man looked at him eagerly like a big dog begging for its owner's love. Shen Yu couldn't resist such a gaze, so he softly said, and Shen Yu took off his outer shirt and lay down beside Shang Junlin. Now, Your Majesty, can you have a good rest? Shang Junlin moved to Shen Yu's side and hugged him. Feeling the cold aura of the young man, his thoughts gradually calmed down. The sick person was the most important. Shen Yu didn't push him away. He laid in the man's warm arms and fell asleep not long after. Whether it was the attack this time or the attempt to take Shen Yu away from him, Shang Junlin wouldn't let it go. With Shen Yu's help, his injury recovered quickly. However, Shang Junlin didn't show it. Instead, he quietly sent the hidden dragon guards to act in the dark. He didn't know if it was Shang Junlin's misconception, but he always felt that Shen Yu was too obedient to him during the recuperation period. The previous alienation seemed to be his own misconception, and his relationship with Shen Yu suddenly returned to the past. No, it wasn't accurate to say that it was the past. It should be more accurate to say that they were even closer than before. No matter if it was day or night, Shen Yu would always be by his side. When he slept, he would also obediently sleep in his arms. When he woke up early in the morning, the feeling of having his sweetheart in his arms was too good, except for some awkward moments. To Shang Junlin, this was considered sweet torture. The hidden dragon guards found more and more clues, and the mastermind was gradually revealed. Shang Junlin didn't act immediately. He was waiting for the best opportunity. He wouldn't leave any traces behind. Shen Yu originally wanted to find the monster that hurt Shang Junlin and get rid of it. However, he was too involved with Shang Junlin now. Moreover, Shang Junlin was the emperor of a country. He couldn't predict the result directly. He could only wait for Shang Junlin to find out more about the monster. When the hidden dragon guards reported the news, Shen Yu was also listening at the side. Your Majesty, you don't have to worry anymore after we get rid of the monster that threatens your life. Shen Yu had been inseparable from Shang Junlin for the past few days. He was worried that Shang Junlin would get hurt when he wasn't paying attention. When that time comes, I can leave with peace of mind. Shen Yu stood by the window and said calmly. Shang Junlin hugged the young man from behind and trapped him between himself and the window. His eyes were gloomy and unclear. Why does you want to leave? I can't always be by your side. You might be annoyed one day. Shen Yu tilted his head. He didn't feel any danger. I won't be annoyed. Shang Junlin rubbed Shen Yu's ear. Don't leave, okay? Shen Yu's mind was in a mess. These days, he realized that he cared too much about Shang Junlin. He wanted to calm down alone. However, Shang Junlin's life was threatened. He couldn't leave without caring about him. If Shang Junlin got hurt or something worse happened after he left, he wouldn't be able to forgive himself. He hesitated and said, no matter how good a friend is, there will be a day when we have to part. I won't allow it. Shang Junlin's arms unconsciously tightened. It was as if he wanted to pull the person in his arms into his body. At this time, do you still think that I only treat you as a friend? The news that Shen Yu wanted to leave made Shang Junlin lose his mind. He couldn't think calmly and blurted out his true thoughts. You fed me your blood because you were worried about me, and you didn't feel repulsed by my closeness. I've never treated you as a friend. It was me who was reckless and had delusional thoughts, wanting to embrace an immortal. His hot breath sprayed on the side of her neck. What followed was an extremely gentle kiss. Genius 1 second. Remember this website, www.bq50cc literature website, mbq50cc. Chapter 283. Shen Yu's heart was like a stone thrown into a calm lake, stirring up waves. The man's embrace was scorching hot. Shen Yu leaned against the man's chest and could feel the violent heartbeat behind her. A gentle kiss with a scorching breath fell on the side of her face. Shen Yu tilted her head, wanting to see the expression of the man behind her. His movements were stopped. Shang Junlin hugged him tightly with his strong arms, so he could only maintain his initial movement. Another kiss fell on her face. This time it was on her lips. Her breath trembled slightly. Her master's state of mind was not as relaxed as he looked. "Doesn't you hate it?" Shang Junlin's voice was low and gentle. "Like this. Doesn't you hate it?" From the first time they met, Shang Junlin wanted to possess her fiercely. However, he knew how to be a qualified hunter and had enough patience to lure Shen Yu into his arms. At this moment, Shang Junlin's heart was nervous. Even when facing thousands of enemy troops, he did not feel as nervous as he did now. His movements seemed to be strong, but in fact, he left enough room for Shen Yu to resist. If the young man in his arms was really unwilling, he would let go and slowly make up for it. While testing, he paid attention to the young man's reaction. Perhaps because of nervousness, the young man put his hand on Shang Junlin's waist. However, Shang Junlin did not feel any resistance. The joy in his heart could no longer be suppressed. He could not help but do more excessive things. One by one, he kissed the young man's face and neck. He watched as the young man's exposed white skin was dyed red inch by inch. Shen Yu did not answer his question, but wasn't his indulgent attitude also a kind of answer? Shang Junlin had an idea in his heart. The huge stone hanging in his heart fell little by little. "You." Shang Junlin buried his head in Shen Yu's neck and whispered softly. Shen Yu was a little itchy from his breath. If Shang Junlin could see his eyes at this time, he would find that there was a rare confusion in the young man's eyes. "What is like?" Shen Yu didn't understand. "I just want to be with you all the time. I want to be close to you. If I'm away from you, I won't be able to eat or drink." Shang Junlin's deep and pleasant voice spoke of his love. He wished he could truly possess the young man in his arms at this moment, but he couldn't. He didn't know if being a little more intimate would cause the immortal to dislike him, but he couldn't bear the consequences of losing the person he loved midway. Shang Junlin knew that immortals did not understand love. He was the one who was delusional and tried to pull down immortals who were untainted by the mortal world. He did not expect Shen Yu to respond to him. It was fine as long as she did not leave him. He could restrain his desires for the rest of his life as long as the immortal above the 9 heavens was willing to stay by his side. Shen Yu didn't know what the people behind him were thinking. He was thinking about Shang Junlin's words. To be honest, he didn't dislike Shang Junlin's intimacy. Even if Shang Junlin didn't greet him and directly kissed him, he didn't feel offended. He just felt a little helpless. Since he was born, he had been alone for countless years. Now that there was one more person by his side, Shen Yu's heart was filled with joy. At this moment, Shen Yu could feel the strong feelings that Shang Junlin deliberately restrained. The confusion in his heart suddenly dissipated. "Memory, I don't know if my feelings for you are the same as yours for me, but I can answer your question just now. I don't hate or dislike your majesty being close to me or kissing me. I also like the feeling of being close to your majesty." Shen Yu slowly spoke out his thoughts. Shang Junlin could no longer restrain the joy in his heart after receiving an unexpected response. He loosened his hand and turned the young man in his arms to face him. Shen Yu raised his eyes and looked at Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin was also looking at him. The young man was undoubtedly extremely beautiful, as if he was created by the creation of heaven and earth. There was still a blush on his face, as if he had applied a thin layer of rouge, which reduced the cold temperament of an immortal and made him look more human. Shen Yu was forced to look up when his chin was lifted. He directly looked into a pair of deep eyes. The overwhelming affection enveloped him. Xinyu looked at the man's enlarged face and subconsciously closed his eyes. This was undoubtedly an attitude of acquiescence. Shang Junlin, who didn't intend to do anything, couldn't control himself anymore. Their lips touched. The young man's breathing intertwined, and his eyelashes trembled. Shang Junlin restrained the rising desire in his heart and maintained the position of their lips touching. He didn't continue. Only the arm around the young man's waist continued to tighten, indicating that the man's heart was not as calm as he appeared to be. This kind of kiss was different from simply being kissed on the face. Xinyu felt a little thirsty and couldn't help but lick his lips. But he seemed to have forgotten the position he and Shang Junlin were in at this moment. Shang Junlin only felt that his lips were swept by something soft and warm. There was a roar in his head, and he couldn't control himself anymore. He chased after it. How could the simple-minded immortals know that their unintentional actions would awaken the sleeping, ominous beast? His lips and teeth were pried open, and the breath of another person swept over. He was kissed thoroughly. This was something that Shun Yu had never experienced before. Even a groan in a daze could greatly stimulate a man and bring about an even more violent storm. After a long time, Shun Yu was finally released. The water stains on his lips were gently sucked away. The man who finally tasted meat was satisfied. He hugged the young man who hadn't come back to his senses and leaned on his body. "Are you feeling better?" Xinyu came back to his senses and only felt that his tongue was numb. "I didn't control myself well. Are you hurt?" The man's voice was gentler than usual. Xinyu felt that his ears were beginning to numb. He shook his head and said, "I'm fine," but he buried his head in the man's arms and refused to raise his head. Hearing Shan Yu's voice, Shang Junlin was relieved. He was afraid that his behavior just now had made the young man unhappy. It seemed that the young man was more indulgent to him than expected. How could he be willing to let go like this? Unconsciously hugging the young man tighter, Shang Junlin thought that he might really never let go. After this day, everyone in the residence discovered that the relationship between Xin Yu and Shang Junlin had become even closer. It was easy to see the relationship between the two of them in that state where no one could interfere. The people who were originally doubtful about the relationship between the two were now sure that the relationship between His Majesty and the handsome young man was indeed as they had guessed. The state preceptor was even more shocked. He knew Shan Yu's real identity and knew the emperor's disrespectful thoughts. He never expected that the emperor would get what he wanted in just a few days. After receiving Shan Yu's response, Shang Junlin would bring Shun Yu with him wherever he went. It was true that he did not want to be separated from Shun Yu for even a moment. A few days later, with the help of Shun Yu, the state preceptor found the hiding place of the monster that attacked Shang Junlin and his men. Shun Yu was not supposed to interfere with the affairs of the mortal world, but that thing had hurt Shang Junlin, so he could not let it go. The group of people arrived at the location that the hidden dragon guards had found. It was a wasteland. The trees were withered, and there was not even a blade of grass. Looking around, there was a layer of gray fog that shrouded the surroundings. It was impossible to see further. The evil spirit here is very strong. The state preceptor's face was solemn. Based on the fight between Shang Junlin and that thing, the other party was very strong. It appeared and disappeared mysteriously in the fog, making it hard to guard against. Xinyu stood beside Shang Junlin and focused on sensing the movements around them. In order not to alert the other party, Xinyu suppressed his breath to the maximum. Otherwise, that thing might not come out if it sensed his presence. Soon, everyone felt that the sound of the wind was not right. There was a sharp and ear-piercing sound coming from all directions. "It's here." The hidden dragon guards formed a well-trained formation. The state preceptor's men assisted them. Everyone was alert to the movements around them. Shang Junlin was alert to the surroundings. He shielded Xinyu behind him and said, "Be careful." Xinyu smelled the same stench that Shang Junlin smelled when he came back with injuries. He knew that the thing that hurt Shang Junlin had been lured out. The sky suddenly darkened. It was gray and blurred their vision. In the gray fog, the monster attacked the humans. To it, these humans were just food that was difficult to deal with. The stench was mixed with the smell of blood. It was the smell of human blood. Xinyu grabbed Shang Junlin's sleeve with one hand and slashed down with the other hand. A glaring white light cut through the gray fog. Everyone instinctively closed their eyes. Before they could react to what had happened, they heard the monster screaming in pain. Then, there was the sound of something heavy falling to the ground. All the sounds disappeared. The gray fog gradually dissipated. The sunlight that had disappeared unknowingly reappeared on the ground. Not far in front of them, a strange-looking beast was lying on the ground. It was surrounded by white flames. The monster struggled fiercely, but it could not break free from the white flames. The unknown black fog on its body was constantly being burned. Every time it burned, the monster would feel more pain. Shang Junlin held Shan Yu's hand tightly. He knew that the white light and the white flames in front of them were the work of Xinyu. Xinyu looked at the burning monster and frowned slightly. He felt a very faint aura of God from the monster, which was almost disappearing. "What's wrong?" Shang Junlin asked when he saw that Shan Yu's expression was not right. Xinyu told him what he had found. "I can't be wrong. It does have the aura of God." "Well, I may know the reason," the state preceptor, who was standing not far away from them, said. I've been reading ancient books these days and found an ancient forbidden technique. It can pollute a weak god with the resentment of humans. It can make the god lose his divinity and become a monster that only knows how to kill." The state preceptor briefly explained the effect of the forbidden technique. Everyone who heard it gasped. The monster in front of them, who was neither human nor beast, was actually a deity. "It's not a god now." Xinyu looked in the direction of the monster and raised his hand. In an instant, it was as if an invisible gust of wind blew out the white flames. The monster let out a soundless roar and slowly stopped moving. No one spoke, and the surroundings fell into an extreme silence. Compared to the news that the monster in front of them was a god, the fact that Shun Yu could kill it effortlessly was obviously more frightening. What was the origin of this young man who had a close relationship with the emperor? The state preceptor was also shocked. He only knew that the young man was an immortal, but he did not know that he was so strong. The monster was a fallen god. Even if it lost its divinity, its strength should not be underestimated. However, the young man just moved his hand and killed it. "Who ordered you to hurt His Majesty?" In the silence, the young man's emotionless voice made people shudder. Genius 1 second. Remember this website, www.bq50. CC Literature Mobile Version Reading Website, mbq50. CC. Chapter 284. The monster was on the verge of death and had completely lost its ability to attack. "This thing has no consciousness. I'm afraid you won't be able to get anything out of it," the state preceptor said under the pressure. Xinyu naturally knew this. He was not asking about the monster itself, but the trace of divinity left in the monster's body. Gods could communicate with heaven and earth. Xinyu could understand everything he wanted to know through the divinity left in the monster. Soon, everyone saw a shadow appear above the monster. In the shadow, a person's figure gradually became clear. The state preceptor gasped. "Is this the person who controlled the monster to attack His Majesty?" Xinyu nodded. "You know him?" "He's a Taoist priest by King Li's side." Shang Junlin glanced at the shadow and said, "It seems that King Li has something to do with this. How should we deal with this monster?" The state preceptor looked troubled. It was already a great favor that the immortal was willing to help. Logically speaking, the immortal shouldn't have to worry about the rest. It's a contaminated god. Returning to heaven and earth is the best ending. Xinyu raised his hand. An invisible wind wrapped around the monster and the shadow disappeared. In the air, the monster's figure faded with the wind. The wind stopped. "It's over?" someone said in a daze. At the same time, somewhere in Qingzhou, a middle-aged man in a Taoist robe covered his chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. When he looked up again, his face was extremely ugly. He had suffered an extremely serious backlash. "Taoist priest, what happened?" The guard outside the door heard the noise and asked. "Nothing." Taoist priest Su wiped the blood from his mouth. I need to cultivate in seclusion for a while. Go and inform His Highness. Yes. Taoist priest Su sat alone in the room, his eyes gloomy. He didn't know who ruined his plan, but he was seriously injured now. He couldn't do anything even if he wanted to. He also had to worry about the imperial court's people who could appear at any time. He had to recover quickly. He looked at the guards outside the door. It was just a few lives. It was their fortune to help him recover his cultivation. Bang! After a few sounds, Taoist priest Su's pale face became rosy. The tightly shut door was pushed open. Su Daozhong didn't even look at the people lying by the door and walked straight out. There weren't enough people. Right now, the mastermind behind all of this is in the Azure province. Furthermore, he is heavily injured. Follow his directions, and you will be able to capture him. In the provincial governor's office, Xinyu summoned an ice blue flower. He raised his hand slightly, and the flower floated in front of the leader of the hidden dragon guards. Shang Junlin stood beside Xinyu and nodded. Go ahead. The leader of the hidden dragon guards left with his men. What had happened today had shocked them greatly. When only the two of them were left in the room, Shang Junlin hugged Xinyu and asked, Is you so angry because that monster hurt me? Since that day, the two of them had become much closer. Xinyu had already gotten used to Shang Junlin's behavior of sticking to her all the time. Xinyu nodded seriously. They shouldn't have hurt you. Shang Junlin stroked Shan Yu's hair gently and looked at him tenderly. You don't have to worry about them. I will take care of everything. Your eyes, your attention, only need to be on me. The hidden dragon guards were very fast. In less than a day, they caught Taoist priest Su, who was in hiding, and stopped him from hurting the innocent. There was a breakthrough in the case of the young girl that had been troubling the imperial court for a long time. Taoist priest Su's cultivation was damaged, and there was a flaw in the illusion that he placed on the jade stone. When the state preceptor discovered this, he immediately reported it to Shang Junlin. When the state preceptor brought the jade stone to the study room, Shun Yu was there too. Regarding this, the state preceptor was initially in disbelief. Now, he was emotionless. He didn't know how the emperor did it. He actually won the immortal's heart and achieved his wish. Your Majesty, I am talking about this jade stone. The state preceptor presented the jade stone to the emperor. The jade stone was placed in a brocade box. When the brocade box was opened, a golden light could be seen shining. However, it was unknown what the problem was. But this golden light did not give people a feeling of auspiciousness. Instead, it gave people a strange feeling. Xinyu could tell that something was done to the jade stone. He waved his hand and removed the illusion on the jade stone. This is the luck stone. Luck stone? The state preceptor had heard of this stone before. It is said that the luck stone can transfer the wearer's luck to another person. This stone is presented to His Majesty as an auspicious object. The person who sent this stone is truly despicable. Shang Junlin's aura turned cold. Only a few people have the guts to covet my luck. Your Majesty is the son of heaven chosen by the heavens. Not everyone's fate can bear such a huge amount of luck. If they have evil thoughts, it will only backfire on them, Xinyu said lightly. Will this item affect Your Majesty? The state preceptor was more worried about this. As a cultivator, he knew better than others how important a person's luck was. I am afraid that this stone also contributed to Your Majesty's injury. Xunyu took the jade stone out of the brocade box. Otherwise, Your Majesty wouldn't have suffered such a serious injury. The state preceptor understood. He had cultivated for many years and naturally knew that the Son of Heaven was blessed by the heavens. Ordinary evil things couldn't get close to him. How should we deal with this item? Just destroy it. Xinyu closed his fingers. When he opened them again, the strange aura on the jade stone disappeared. However, we can't just let go of the matter of scheming against Your Majesty. That person has been caught. What does you want to do? Hearing Shan Yu's protective tone, Shang Junlin felt a burst of warmth in his heart. Just let him have a taste of having his luck taken away, Xunyu replied. Let me handle this matter. It was my negligence that I didn't discover anything wrong this time. I am willing to atone for my mistakes. The state preceptor said, Yes, I will leave this matter to you. Shang Junlin still remembered that the state preceptor had said that immortals couldn't have too much karma with the secular world. Shen Yu's karma was enough for him. After handing over the matter, Shang Junlin took Shen Yu to play in Qingzhou for a few days. He wanted to show the youth the prosperity of the human world and give the youth the best he could. After the matter in Qingzhou was over, Shang Junlin's injury was almost healed. The group set off for the capital. Princely waited in his mansion for a long time, but he didn't receive any good news from Su Daozhang. Instead, he was getting more and more unlucky. He was injured when he went out. Finally, he met the cold imperial army. The conspiracy of many years was exposed. The imperial army came too quickly. Princely was not prepared at all. Princely colluded with Su Daozhang to harm the innocent. His crime of plotting rebellion was announced to the world. For a time, everyone wanted to punish him. Shen Yu and Shang Junlin returned to the palace. This time, Shang Junlin didn't continue to hide his existence. After the matter of Princely came to an end, the courtiers found that there was one more young man in the palace. He ate and lived with the emperor. Their posture was intimate. He even lived in the emperor's bedroom. What does your majesty mean? What is the origin of the person in the palace? Why does your majesty, who has always been averse to beauty, behave like this? All kinds of questions appeared in their minds. All kinds of memorials about Shen Yu flew to the palace like snowflakes. What surprised the courtiers was that the state preceptor, prime minister, and other courtiers didn't do anything. They didn't persuade or ask about it. It was another memorial about the young man. Shang Junlin just glanced at it and threw it aside. Did someone embarrass your majesty? Shen Yu took a piece of chestnut cake and walked over. Shang Junlin still dealt with official business in the imperial study. Unlike before, he packed Shen Yu and brought him here. The imperial study, which used to be serious, was full of things Shang Junlin prepared for Shen Yu. Gadgets, stories, snacks, fruits, everything. For Shen Yu, it was the same everywhere. Shang Junlin wanted him to stay by his side. He said that it was lonely to deal with government affairs alone. Shen Yu thought that when he was alone, he wasn't as happy as when he was with Shang Junlin, so he agreed. Shen Yu asked this because in the story he read 2 days ago, the main character, the emperor, was restrained by his courtiers and couldn't issue any government orders. Shen Yu didn't know how Shang Junlin got along with the courtiers. He thought that Shang Junlin was like the main character in the story and was bullied. Shang Junlin wanted to explain, but then he thought that misunderstandings might not be a bad thing. He patted the seat next to him and said, "You, come and sit." Shen Yu sat down and said, "You are the emperor. How can you be bullied?" "They didn't bully me." Shang Junlin stretched out his long arms and hugged the young man. "It's just some small things that annoy me. For example, Shen Yu's matter." Shang Junlin didn't intend to tell the world about the young man's true identity. It wasn't necessary. It was enough for him to know. But those people didn't let it go and insisted on asking for an explanation. Shang Junlin kept these things a secret. He didn't let anyone reveal it in front of Shen Yu. A high and mighty immortal didn't need to worry about such things. But, you agreed to be with me. Shouldn't you give me a status? What status? Shen Yu didn't understand why the topic suddenly changed to a status. In fact, the courtiers kept sending memorials to me because of the matter between you and me. In the mortal world, people who are close to each other will be married. I and you are so close, but we haven't made our relationship known to the public. Shen Yu was stunned. Your Majesty wants to marry me? Shen Yu remembered that when Shang Junlin made it clear, he said that he liked him so much that he wanted to marry him. But the other party didn't say anything, so he didn't continue to think about it. I really want to. It's best to let the world know that you and I are a couple. Shang Junlin intimately rubbed Shen Yu's cheek. Is you willing? Eunuch Ming stood at the side and looked down, secretly saying, Your Majesty is really tricking immortals. Shen Yu imagined that he would be accompanied by Shang Junlin in the future. It didn't seem impossible. After nodding, Shen Yu was kissed fiercely by the man who couldn't control himself. Shen Yu's breath was stolen. The man was so strong that Shen Yu had to hook his neck. After the kiss, Shang Junlin didn't let go of the young man in his arms. He kept pecking the other party's face. You, how lucky I am. The ministers didn't wait for an explanation from His Majesty. Instead, they heard that His Majesty was going to get married. They looked at each other. What's going on with His Majesty? What's the identity of this young man that His Majesty brought back from Mount Shi? It's only been a few days, but His Majesty already has the idea of getting married? Before this, no matter how they wrote, His Majesty wouldn't agree to confer the title of Empress and take in concubines. The state preceptor, prime minister, and others who knew Shan Yu's true identity felt even more complicated. Will His Majesty really be okay? The prime minister looked worried. From the looks of it, the immortal doesn't seem to have no feelings for His Majesty. What's more, if the immortal isn't willing, even if His Majesty wants, it won't happen. If the immortal is willing, His Majesty will announce it to the world with great fanfare. The state preceptor comforted the prime minister. Actually, when he first found out what His Majesty was thinking, the state preceptor was also very worried. However, after what happened in Qingzhou, he could tell that the immortal was not completely uninterested in His Majesty to be tricked by His Majesty. Xinyu didn't know about the thoughts of outsiders. He was sitting on the bed in his bedroom, waiting for Shang Junlin to come back. After returning to the palace, Xinyu returned to the appearance of an immortal. His white hair reached the ground, and it was blasphemous to look at him. He didn't have to wait long before Shang Junlin pushed the door open and came in. He was holding a palm-sized jade box in his hand. Xinyu curiously looked over and asked, "Your Majesty, what is this?" "A gift for you," Shang Junlin said as he opened the jade box. Inside the box, there was an anklet that glowed with silver light. The anklet was very thin and made of an unknown material. Under the candlelight, it glowed with a faint silver light. A small bell of the same color hung on the anklet. The anklet was taken out by the man's big hand, and the bell made a slight sound. "Do you like it?" Shang Junlin asked in a low voice. "I like it." Xinyu reached out to take it, but the man dodged him. "I'll put it on for you." Shang Junlin squatted down beside the bed and held Shan Yu's foot. The young man's foot was fair, and the back of his foot was slightly arched. His toes were round and smooth, and his fingernails were slightly pink. There were no flaws at all. Shang Junlin's eyes gradually darkened. Xin Yu's palm was getting hotter and hotter. He couldn't help but move his foot and asked, "Is it done?" "Wait a little longer." The man's voice was hoarse. Shang Junlin held Shun Yu's foot again and placed it on his bent leg. He lowered his head and carefully put the anklet on for him. The silver anklet covered the anklet, as if it was an immortal who had mistakenly entered the mortal world. Shin Yu moved his foot curiously, and the bell hanging on the silver anklet made a crisp sound. "Why is it still ringing?" "This way, as long as a Yu appears, I'll know." Shang Junlin stood up and sat beside Shin Yu. Shin Yu looked up and directly met the man's eyes that were as deep as the night sky. "A Yu, I want you." Genius 1 second. Remember this website, www.biku50. CC Literature Mobile Version Website, MBQ50. CC. Chapter 285. Their surroundings became hot and dry. The man's eyes were deep, like a bottomless abyss with a burning breath. His gaze was like silk, entangling Shunyu little by little. Shinyu also became hot. The crimson color crawled up her fair skin. Her skin that was as translucent as snow was dyed red, making her appear even more alluring. Shin Yu's heart was filled with an indescribable nervousness. He knew what Shang Junlin's words meant. Even if he hadn't experienced it personally, he had read a lot about it in novels. The man had already lifted his chin and leaned over to kiss him. The kiss interrupted Shan Yu's words. The man's actions were gentle. It wasn't the first time they had been so intimate. Shin Yu adapted well and responded meekly. Shin Yu's response was the best catalyst. Shang Junlin threw away his last scruples and hugged him tightly. "If you can't accept it, just say stop." Shang Junlin ended the kiss and gently stroked the young man's cheek. His actions were in sharp contrast to the bright flames burning in his eyes. Xinyu nervously grabbed the hem of his clothes. Ding-ling-ling. The sound of the bells surrounded them, composing a moving song. The bed curtain fell, and the red candles were burning. The light and shadow swayed, and the bells rang intermittently throughout the night. When he woke up the next day, the sky was already bright. Xinyu turned over and tried to sit up. He didn't know where he pulled, but it hurt so much that he gasped. Uncomfortable? The man's low and pleasant voice sounded in his ear. Xinyu didn't want to talk to him. Last night, he begged him to stop several times. The other party agreed, but in the end, his actions became worse and more ruthless. Shang Junlin supported his head with one hand and looked at the young man who was throwing a tantrum with his back facing him. His expression was full of satisfaction. He reached out and pulled the young man back into his arms. The young man tried to dodge, but he couldn't. He could only let the man hug him. "Are you angry with me?" Shang Junlin leaned close to the young man's ear and said gently. As he spoke, his hot breath sprayed on the sensitive earlobe. The pink color spread, and Shun Yu's body unconsciously trembled. The man chuckled and sucked her earlobe into his mouth. "Let go of me." Xinyu reached out and tried to push the man away. The exposed wrist was covered with red marks and teeth marks. Shang Junlin's eyes darkened. He still remembered how he had imprinted these marks on it. Letting go of the earlobe that had been bullied enough, Shang Junlin grabbed the hand that came to him and kissed it lovingly. "I saw you this morning and you didn't get hurt. If you really don't feel well, I'll get the imperial physician to take a look at you." "No need." Shun Yu buried his face in the quilt and said in a muffled voice, "Jin got what he wanted, so it's inevitable that he's a little excited. You, don't be angry. It won't happen again." Shang Junlin hugged her and coaxed her gently. What he said was the truth. In that situation, he couldn't control himself to stop. He just wanted to tear her apart and swallow her whole, never to be separated again. It was Shun Yu's first time experiencing this kind of thing. What he encountered was a ferocious beast that was extremely hungry. Now that he finally got what he wanted, wouldn't it eat him up completely? "Are you thirsty? Drink some water first." Xinyu felt that it was okay. When he was half awake, the man seemed to have used his mouth to pass him some water. Now, there was still some sweetness in his mouth. The water was prepared early in the morning. Shang Junlin brought it over and supported Xinyu to lean on his body to feed him the water. Xinyu drank the water from Shang Junlin's hand and licked the water stains on his lips. "The water is sweet. I added honey." Shang Junlin put down the cup, lifted Xun Yu's chin, and kissed him. "Why did you?" Xin Yu's mouth was still a little painful from being kissed. He was still angry and was kissed by the man again. So, he pushed him hard. Shang Junlin kissed him for a while before releasing him. "Zhen only kissed you. What did you think Zhan was going to do?" The young man's cheeks were red, and the corners of his eyes were dark red. He glanced at the man and said, "Your Majesty has no credibility in my heart. It's Zhen's fault." Shang Junlin actively admitted his mistake. As for whether he would change or not, that was another matter. "It's very late now. Your Majesty, don't you need to go to court?" Shang Junlin was a good and responsible emperor. Xin Yu had lived in the palace for so long, and he always went to court on time. He never slacked off. When he woke up today, he was already there. It had been so long, but he didn't show any signs of leaving. Xin Yu couldn't help but be curious. Did he not plan to go to court? Would the ministers be dissatisfied? The more Xin Yu thought about it, the more he felt that this was not right. If the other party didn't go to court because of him and caused the ministers to be dissatisfied, wouldn't it be his fault? He adjusted his position in the man's arms and placed his hands on the man's chest. He looked up at him seriously and said, "Your Majesty, you can't not go to court because of pleasure. It's not good." When did Jin say that Jin didn't go to court? Shang Junlin looked at the young man who was seriously persuading him and laughed in his heart. "At this time, the court has already finished. Don't worry. Even if it's for you, Zhan will not become a fatuous emperor who doesn't go to court because of a beauty. Jin can't bear to let you be criticized by the world because of Zhan." Xin Yu was ashamed and angry that he had made such a big mistake. He buried his head in the man's arms and refused to lift it up no matter what. Shang Junlin looked at the young man's ears that were dyed red, and his heart felt warm. He dug out the young man who was avoiding the truth from his arms and said, "Good day, you. Jin won't laugh at you. Why are you hiding? Jin is happy that you are worried that Jean is not doing his job." "Then you didn't sleep at all?" "Last night, he was a god, but he couldn't stand such a crazy thing. The other party was just a mortal. How could he be so energetic?" Xinyu couldn't figure it out. There was nothing to do in the morning court today. Jin came back to sleep for a while after the court. "I woke up not long before you woke up. Prince Li's matter had been solved. The evidence was conclusive, and he had committed a monstrous murder. No one dared to exonerate him. During this period of time, there was nothing else to do in the court." Shang Junlin announced the news of his wedding during the morning court. He remembered Xinyu, who was in the palace, so he didn't care about the reaction of the courtiers and directly announced the end of the tide. The news of the emperor's wedding had been revealed some time ago. The courtiers weren't surprised. Combined with the emperor's actions during this period of time, they could see that the emperor was determined to do this. Shang Junlin didn't want to waste time in the morning court. He hurriedly finished the morning court and returned to the palace. Xinyu hadn't woken up yet. Looking at the sleeping face of the other party, Shang Junlin changed out of his court clothes and went back to sleep with the other party in his arms. Xinyu was, after all, a god. He recovered relatively quickly. After a day, the discomfort had subsided. The marks on his body had also dissipated a lot. Shang Junlin looked at the fading marks and really wanted to reprint them. But he also knew that he didn't know how to control himself the first time. He had to give Xinyu some time to recover. With the breakthrough of their intimate relationship, Xinyu and Shang Junlin got along even better. No matter where they went, as long as Xinyu was willing, Shang Junlin would bring him along. The drought was completely solved. It wasn't known when it started, but rumors began to spread among the people that the drought was solved because the heavens were dissatisfied with Prince Li and Su Daozhang's evil deeds. The messenger was now in the palace and was about to tie the knot with the emperor. The two of them were destined to be married. One of the reasons the messenger appeared in Dahuan and solved the natural disaster there was to keep the appointment with the emperor. So miraculous. Is it true? Someone questioned. Of course it's true. Otherwise, why didn't the messenger go to other countries? Why did he come to Dahuan? Dahuan isn't the only country suffering from drought this year. I heard that the messenger first appeared in Mount Shi. Before that, there were no traces of the messenger's existence in the world. Some officials in the court didn't believe it and sent people to investigate. Indeed, they couldn't find any traces of the messenger's previous life. This can't be fake. The news spread, and the people were looking forward to the wedding. The officials also felt that it was inconceivable. They didn't believe the words of the people at first, but the results of the investigation made them believe it. The imperial preceptor, the prime minister, and other officials didn't object at first. Was it because they received the news in advance? Since he has such an identity, why didn't he tell us in advance? He made us wait for the memorial. I don't know if it will make the messenger unhappy. Under Shang Junlin's arrangement, the voices of opposition disappeared. With the celebration of the entire nation, the day of the wedding finally arrived. It wasn't the coronation ceremony, but the wedding of Shang Junlin and Xinyu. On the day of the wedding, the officials saw the real face of the rumored messenger for the first time. It was no wonder that they didn't know. The emperor was too protective. Many officials felt that if it wasn't for this wedding, they might never see the messenger's face. After seeing the messenger, no one doubted Shan Yu's identity anymore. There was no other reason. Shin Yu's appearance was too convincing. With his white hair reaching the ground and his otherworldly temperament, he suddenly looked like an immortal. Some people would even believe that he was a real god. As one of the few people who knew the real identity of Shin Yu, the imperial preceptor once asked the emperor why he used the name of the messenger. Shang Junlin told him that it was decided after discussing with Shin Yu. On the one hand, Shang Junlin didn't want Shin Yu to be disturbed. On the other hand, the real name of the god couldn't be known by too many people. Until the end of the wedding, Everyone only knew that the one marrying Shang Junlin was the messenger sent by the heavens. As for the other party's name and other information, they didn't know anything. On the day of the wedding, Shin Yu and Shang Junlin both changed into red wedding clothes. Both of their appearances were outstanding. When they stood together, they looked very compatible. The imperial preceptor participated in the whole process of the wedding. It was different from the previous weddings of the emperor and the empress. This wedding had some ancient rituals. After all, this was a wedding between a god and a human. As the officiator of this wedding, the imperial preceptor was very excited. After he finished reading the congratulatory words, the auspicious signs from the heavens enveloped Shin Yu and Shang Junlin. Those who witnessed this wedding no longer had any thoughts of questioning Shan Yu's identity. After the wedding, Shin Yu's life didn't change much. Other than having to deal with Shang Junlin, who was in high demand, Shin Yu himself also enjoyed the feeling of intimacy with his lover, so he didn't think much of it. After the wedding, it seemed to prove that De Huan was blessed by the heavens. Under the leadership of Shang Junlin, De Huan developed better and better. Its territory expanded, and its national strength became stronger and stronger. 10 years later, Shang Junlin selected an excellent child from the imperial clan to be his successor. 15 years later, Shang Junlin gradually let go of his power. Every year, he would take Shen Yu to tour the mountains and rivers. 25 years later, a new emperor ascended the throne. Shang Junlin and Shen Yu disappeared in front of the people. Some people said that they had seen the two figures in the beautiful mountains and forests. Some people also said that they had seen the white-haired immortal on the top of the snowy mountains. However, there was no trace of the other person beside him. 100 years passed in a flash. Shen Yu sent his lover away and returned to Mount Shi alone. Once again, he walked through the place where they first met. When Shang Junlin was still on the throne, he ordered that everything here should remain the same. After the new emperor ascended the throne, this order was upheld. Therefore, when he revisited the old place, everything was the same as before. Shin Yu looked at the blooming flowers. It was as if he had returned to the day when they first met. Shin Yu had never told Shang Junlin that he was awakened by him. After so many years, he had also thought of keeping Shang Junlin. However, even if he was a god, he could not change the lifespan of a mortal at will. If he forced it, he would be punished by the heavens. He could force people to stay for a while, but he could not force people to stay for a lifetime. Without Shang Junlin, there was nothing in this world that could attract him. Shin Yu returned to this place just to take a look at the place where they first met. His eyes were slightly closed. A steady stream of power was emitted from the handsome god's body and fed back to the world. "What are you doing?" A man's urgent voice sounded behind him. Then, Shen Yu fell into a familiar embrace. "Sorry, I'm late." One kiss after another fell on the young man's face and neck, with a strong sense of comfort. "Why are you so stupid?" Shang Junlin was scared when he thought of the scene he saw when he hurried over. Shen Yu was actually dissipating the power of the origin. Was it because he was no longer here, so he used this method to force himself into a deep sleep? Gods would not die. However, once they lost their power of the origin, they would fall into a deep sleep and would not know when they would wake up. They might also disappear from the world during their deep sleep. Shang Junlin did not dare to imagine if he had been a step late. Fortunately, he had rushed over as fast as he could. Shang Junlin hugged the white-haired immortal tightly in his arms. He was very distressed. Shin Yu opened his eyes. The familiar handsome face came into view. Shin Yu hugged him tightly and could not wait to kiss him. "Don't be afraid. We will never be separated again," Shang Junlin replied gently and patted his back to comfort him. "Why are you?" Shin Yu's voice choked. "It's all thanks to you that I finished my tribulation in advance." Shang Junlin hugged him and roughly explained the cause and effect. Shin Yu could not listen to this now. "Are you really back?" "Yes. From now on, even if Yu does not want me, I will not let go." Shin Yu rubbed against the man's arms. "I will not abandon you." Under the bright moon, the two loving figures hugged each other tightly. There was nothing in this world that could separate them. Genius 1 second. Remember this website, www.bq50cc literature mobile version reading website, mbq50cc. Chapter 286. In the hallway, the agent strode to catch up with the young man in front. Brother Shin, are we just going to let this go? What do you mean by let it go? Do you think I'm the kind of person who will swallow the bitter pill? The young man in front paused and took off his sunglasses, revealing a pair of flirtatious foxy eyes. The young man had a very outstanding face. Even though the agent often saw it, he was still dazzled by it. He was indeed the top god of the entertainment circle. With just a face, he could attract countless fans. But now, your endorsements and scripts have all been secretly manipulated by the company and given to Zhou Qing. It's the former company that is about to terminate the contract. Shenyu corrected the agent. Okay, the former company. What do you think the people in that company are thinking? They didn't support you, who had a bright future, but supported Zhou Qing, who was inferior to you in every aspect. The agent became more and more indignant. Since the beginning of his career, he had been guiding Shenyu. Not to mention other things, Shenyu's face alone was enough to make him thrive in the entertainment circle. Not to mention Shan Yu's natural acting skills. All the directors he had worked with said that he was born to be in this industry. In the beginning, the company had indeed poured its resources into Shenyu. Because of Shenyu, a mediocre agency had become one of the hottest companies in the industry. Just when everyone thought that the two sides could continue to maintain a harmonious and friendly relationship, Zhou Qing's appearance broke everything. Hearing the agent's words, Shen Yu's mouth curved into a smile. Isn't the reason obvious? Zhou Qing hooked the new boss's heart and gave him whatever he wanted. It's just a few resources. It's not troublesome at all. Shen Yu wasn't someone who would be bullied easily. After knowing that the resources that should have belonged to him were secretly manipulated and given to others, he directly complained to the higher-ups of the company. The new boss felt that he had lost face and said that unless he was willing to admit his mistake, he wouldn't accept any jobs for the time being. It was equivalent to directly freezing him. I'm afraid it's not just that. He wants to use this to force you to submit. The agent looked at the young man's face and sighed heavily. In the entertainment circle, with such a face, it was good to be successful, but it would also bring a lot of trouble. Is the new CEO really trying to support his new lover? But that wasn't necessarily the case. He just wanted to take out his anger on Shenyu because he failed and was taught a lesson instead. Fortunately, Shenyu's contract was about to expire. They still had a way out. Hello, are you Mr. Shen and Mr. Wang? A young man in a suit walked over. Yes, the agent replied. I'm Mr. Shang's secretary. My surname is Du. Please follow me. Secretary Du led the two of them to the private elevator that led straight to the top floor. Along the way, the manager was extremely nervous. They had come here because they had no other choice. Shen Yu's original company, Fengshang Entertainment, had a lot of say in the industry. They said that no one dared to take the risk of offending Fengshang Entertainment to take over Shenyu, only Xingyao. Xingyao was a new entertainment company that had risen in the past 2 years. Backed by the Shang Corporation, even if it was a new company, no one dared to provoke them. After all, as one of the leading enterprises in the country, the Shang Corporation wasn't something that anyone could afford to offend. Needless to say, the Shang Corporation had always been cooperating with the country. They were involved in a wide range of industries. No one would be stupid enough to provoke such a giant. In the elevator, Secretary Du quietly sized up Shenyu. He remembered that he was Mr. Shang's special assistant. This Mr. Shang didn't refer to Xingyao's CEO, but the entire Shang Corporation CEO, Shang Junlin. Xingyao had been established for 2 years. It had always been managed by Shang Junlin's cousin. Shang Junlin rarely asked about this company, until Shan Yu's incident happened. The news that Shan Yu was being harassed by Fengshang Entertainment wasn't a secret in the circle. After Shang Junlin knew about it, he asked Xingyao to extend an olive branch to Shen Yu's agent. He also specifically told him that if Shen Yu came, he should bring him to see him directly. Therefore, The person who appeared in Xing Yao's CEO's office today wasn't Xing Yao's CEO, but Shang Junlin. Secretary Du didn't know what his boss was thinking, but when he saw Shun Yu for the first time, he knew that this was an existence that could make countless people go crazy. The elevator stopped, and Secretary Du led him straight to the largest office area. Knock, knock. The office door was knocked regularly. Come in. A man's deep and majestic voice came from the office. Secretary Du pushed the door open and made an inviting gesture. Xin Yu and his agent stepped into the office. Seeing the man sitting behind the desk, Shun Yu was stunned. He had seen Xing Yao's CEO before. Obviously, the man in front of him wasn't. Compared to his impression of Xing Yao's CEO, this man was younger and more handsome. He had sharp eyebrows and bright eyes. His facial features were well defined. Under his chiseled face, he gave people a sense of distance. His agent also noticed that something was wrong. It's Mr. Shang, the CEO of the Shang Corporation, Secretary Du explained. I have understood Mr. Shun's situation. Mr. Wang, you can talk to Secretary Du about the cooperation. The man said in a cold tone. Mr. Wang, please come with me. Secretary Du led the dazed agent to the next room. Compared to his agent, Shun Yu's performance was much calmer. After looking around, Shun Yu walked to the desk, put his hands on the desk, and looked down at the man. Mr. Shang, you asked me to stay alone. Do you have something to say to me? Or, you promised to help me. What do you want from me? Shun Yu never thought that there was a free lunch in the world. After being in the entertainment industry for a long time, this sentence was even more true. After he fell into a low point, it wasn't that no one had offered to help him, but these people had obvious motives. If it was so easy to give in, Xin Yu wouldn't have gotten himself into such a situation. These people were all blacklisted by Xin Yu. When he received the olive branch from Xing Yao, Xin Yu didn't think that the other party would help him for no reason. He just didn't expect that the person behind the scenes would be the CEO of the Shang Corporation. The CEO of the Shang Corporation was very mysterious. The outside world didn't know much about him. Xin Yu had only heard about him occasionally from others. It was said that he was an unreasonable and ruthless person. The image of the man in the mouth of others was very different from the person he saw in person today. What do you think I want? Shang Junlin looked up and met Shan Yu's sharp eyes. It's said that Mr. Shang doesn't do business without benefits. I think I can't bring any benefits to Mr. Shang right now, right? Shan Yu knew himself well. Not to mention his current achievements, even if he stood at the top of the entertainment industry, the benefits he could bring to the CEO of the Shang Corporation were limited. What if I say that I want you? The man relaxed and leaned against the back of the chair. His hands were folded in front of him, and his eyes were direct. The strange thing was that the man's expression didn't change even though he said such words. Only the fire in his eyes showed his master's true intentions. He's looking at me seriously, and I don't hate it. Xin Yu had a strange feeling in his heart. After being in the entertainment industry for so many years, he had encountered all kinds of gazes. Some were jealous, some were admiring, some were envious, and some were disgusting. The man's gaze didn't belong to any of them. It was as if he was just answering his questions seriously and didn't make him feel uncomfortable. I don't think that the CEO of the Shang Corporation would lack a bed warmer. Shun Yu raised his eyebrows. Not a bed warmer. The man frowned. Did someone ask you for such a thing? Xin Yu felt that he could hear the displeasure in the man's tone. He smiled. Isn't this kind of thing normal in the entertainment industry? Who? The man pressed his lips and his aura became cold. Xin Yu was really sure this time that the man was angry. Why? Mr. Shang, why are you asking this? Are you going to help me teach them a lesson? They shouldn't have been so rude to you. Only Mr. Shang can do it, right? For some reason, Xin Yu wanted to tease the man who was angry because he was offended. I can't do it either. Shang Junlin looked up at Xin Yu and explained seriously. I didn't mean that. I like your works very much. I don't want those people with bad taste to hinder your career. Xin Yu stood up and put his sunglasses on the desk. He walked to the sofa and sat down. I thought I had charmed Mr. Shang and made hing come to Xing Yao personally. It seems that I was overthinking. Since that's the case, let's do business according to the rules. The man who had always been good at strategizing in the business world was at a loss. He didn't understand why Yu attitude suddenly became cold. He stood up subconsciously and walked to Yu. I'm not. If someone else said that, I would be angry. But if it's Mr. Shang, I don't think there's anything to be angry about. Yu suddenly interrupted Shang Junlin. He looked up at the man who had walked in front of him. If I bribe Mr. Shang, can those people from Fengshang Entertainment get their retribution? How do you want to bribe? Seeing the sly look in the young man's eyes, Shang Junlin knew that he had just been teased. Well, Yu blinked. It depends on what kind of bribe Mr. Shang wants. Shang Junlin's eyes darkened. He put one hand on the back of the sofa behind Yu. Anything? The man didn't hide his aggression. Yu smiled. Didn't Mr. Shang say that you don't have those people's intentions? It's not that I don't. I just don't want to show it and scare you. But Shang Junlin found that the young man didn't seem to be scared. He didn't show any disgust at his real intentions. He had been paying attention to the young man for a while. Naturally, he knew that the young man was different from some people in the entertainment industry. If he was really someone who would do anything to achieve his goals, he wouldn't be embarrassed like this. Brother Shin, we're done here. Come and take a look at the contract. The agent was halfway through his words when he saw the young man being pressed on the sofa by Mr. Shang. After he reacted, he quickly turned his head. I didn't see anything. You can continue. Shang Junlin let go of his hand and stood up. A trace of regret flashed in his heart. Yu stood up as well. He didn't feel the slightest bit embarrassed that his good deed had been exposed. He glanced at his manager, who was emitting a bleak aura with his back facing him. Before Shang Junlin could react, he quickly kissed the man on the face. Give Mr. Shang some interest first. The agent couldn't stay for another minute. He hurriedly left with Yu. Shang Junlin looked at the closed door and touched the place where Yu kissed. Genius 1 second. Remember this website. www.bq50cc literature mobile version website. mbq50cc. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.